Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Vigilante Deku lived a double life behind the cafe? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku had always loved working at the cafe. The warm smell of roasted beans, the hiss of the milk steamer, the quiet hum of early morning regulars, it was comforting, familiar, and it gave him time to breathe between college lectures and late-night rooftop runs. But lately he'd been distracted. Across the street, a new hero agency was under construction. The logo hadn't gone up yet, but the buzz around it was impossible to ignore. Rumors were flying big-name pro heroes, elite sidekicks, maybe even someone from the top 10. Every time the front door chimed, Izuku's head would whip toward the street, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone he recognized. Someone he could fanboy over. So far, no luck. But that didn't stop his mind from wandering. During the morning rush, he poured steamed milk into an espresso instead of drip. He accidentally gave someone a double shot instead of decaf. He even spelled Yuki with an IE on a cup, and he never messed up names. His mom, who owned the place and ran the register most days, had started to notice. Midoriya Izuku, she snapped one morning after he handed out the wrong order again. If you put hazelnut syrup in one more black coffee, I swear I'll replace you with the espresso machine. Izuku winced and offered a sheepish smile. Sorry, Ma. There's a lot going on across the street and none of it involves you pouring milk into someone's Americano, she cut in, arms crossed. He sighed and gave a clumsy salute. Yes, ma'am. No more hero watching during shifts. Still, as he turned back to the counter and caught sight of the agency through the window, his heart fluttered. Just one glimpse, he thought. Maybe even Lemelon. Izuku shook himself and focused on the task at hand. Clean mug, fresh grounds, timer set. He could do this. One properly brewed black coffee, no distractions, no errors. The door chimed. He didn't look up at first. The morning rush was over, and it was probably just Mr. Sato coming in for his usual green tea and newspaper. But then the air shifted heavier somehow, charged. Like static before a storm. Boots thudded against the floor. Steady, confident. Chirp. Izuku glanced up. And froze. The man at the counter didn't look like a regular. Blonde hair messy in a way that had to be intentional, spiked out beneath a black cap. Dark hoodie under a bomber jacket. He had a duffel slung over one shoulder and a scowl that could probably kill weak Wi-Fi. Intense didn't even cover it. He didn't say anything. Just looked up at the menu board, then back at Izuku. Black. No sugar. His voice was low, rough around the edges, like gravel under boots. He didn't give a name. Izuku blinked, hands already moving to prep the order. Right. One black coffee. Coming up. As he worked, he caught himself sneaking glances. The man didn't pull out a phone, didn't fidget. Just stood there with his arms crossed, eyes sharp and watchful. Like he was always waiting for something to go wrong. Izuku handed him the coffee, careful not to spill it. Here you go. The guy took it, raised a brow, and sipped. The pause. Then a barely there nod. It's good. Izuku flushed with stupid, immediate pride. Thanks. I try to get it right. You wouldn't believe how many people come in and order black coffee only to dump 5 sugars in it. That earned him a twitch of the lips. Maybe a smirk. Hard to tell. I'm not most people, the guy muttered, turning to leave. No, I guess you're not, Izuku said under his breath, watching him go. As the man turned to leave, something shiny caught Izuku's eye, just barely visible, dangling from the corner of his pants pocket. A keychain. Not just any keychain. Izuku's heart nearly stopped. It was the limited edition All Might keychain from his early days overseas, the one with the old, rougher costume, back before his debut in Japan. Hardly anyone recognized that version of him anymore. Without thinking, Izuku practically launched himself over the counter. Wait, is that the limited edition All Might keychain from when he was in the States? The man stopped mid-step and turned, brow raised, clearly surprised. Yeah, it's from his early days. Not a lot of people realize it's him at first. His costume was way different back then. Izuku's eyes lit up like someone had plugged him into a power grid. That's amazing. Seriously, how did you even get that? It was a promo from a US tour, right? They only released like 100 of those. The guy blinked at him, a little taken aback by the energy, then shrugged. Got lucky, I guess. Friend of mine picked it up when they were overseas. Thought I'd appreciate it. Izuku was practically vibrating. You do not understand how cool that is. I've only ever seen one online and it was like, triple the price. And this one looks real. You can even see the old insignia detail on the gloves. The man let out a small huff of a laugh, gruff but amused. Didn't expect a whole history lesson with my coffee. Izuku flushed, rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry. All Might's kind of my favorite. I've read everything. Watched every interview. That keychain is like whoa. The guy looked at him for a moment. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. Then he gave a slow, almost reluctant nod. Yeah. He's mine too. Izuku smiled, practically glowing. He doesn't get enough credit for the way he changed the public's view of heroes, you know? Especially early on, when he was just muscle and optimism. People always talk about the symbol of peace era, but there's something special about how he started out. Unpolished. Still figuring it all out. The man stared at him a second longer, like he wasn't used to people talking like that. Like maybe he got it too, but never really said it out loud. Yeah, he said at last. Guess you could say that. Izuku opened his mouth to ask more where he got it, if he had any other rare merch, maybe even his name, but the guy had already turned back to the door, one hand resting on the handle. Thanks for the coffee, he said without looking back. Then he stepped out into the street, disappearing into the noise and concrete, the keychain swaying gently with each step. Izuku stood there for a moment, hands still half raised, like he'd just watched a ghost walk out the door. Huh, he murmured to himself. Wonder who he was. A sharp ahem jolted Izuku back to reality. He turned, startled, to find a growing line of customers staring at him, some amused, others clearly in need of caffeine and patience. His face went red in an instant. Oh sorry. I spaced out for a second. He straightened up, scrambling to reset his customer service smile as the next person stepped forward. Good morning. What can I get started for you? As they rattled off their order, Izuku worked on autopilot, grinding beans, steaming milk, scribbling names, trying to shake the image of that mysterious man from his mind. But the keychain, the voice, that weird feeling in his chest when the guy said All Might was his favorite too. Izuku bit the inside of his cheek. Get it together, he told himself. It was just a customer. A really intense, All Might loving, possibly super cool customer. He handed off the next drink and kept moving, but the curiosity lingered like a shot of espresso at the back of his tongue, sharp and impossible to ignore. The bell above the door jingled again, this time from the back entrance. Morning, Izuku, came Mei's voice as she stepped into the cafe, tying her apron on the way in. Her hair was half wild, cheeks a little smudged like she'd been working on something that didn't work out in her favor. Izuku looked up from the counter, a little more relaxed now that the line had thinned. Hey, you're just in time, the morning rush hit hard. Ugh, figures, she groaned, dropping her bag behind the register. One of my prototypes exploded at 5 a.m. It was either come in or suffocate from smoke. Izuku snorted. That's not even the weirdest reason you've shown up late. She shrugged with a grin. What can I say? Genius waits for no schedule. As she started prepping the next set of cups, she glanced at him. You look kind of out of it though. Everything okay? Izuku hesitated, then leaned against the counter. Yeah, there was this guy earlier. First-time customer. Black coffee, no name. Real intense vibe, serious expression, strong build. Kinda looked like he walked out of a fight and into a cafe. Mei raised a brow, intrigued. And? He had this old All Might keychain, Izuku said, eyes lighting up again. Like really old. From his US days before he came to Japan. Hardly anyone even recognizes that version of him anymore. Mei paused, tilting her head. And? Izuku groaned. He left right after. I barely said 2 words before I realized there was a line. Mei smirked. Well, if he comes back again, maybe ask his name instead of drooling over the merch. I wasn't, Izuku started, then gave up with a sigh. Forget it. She just laughed and handed him a fresh mug. You're such a dork. But I hope he comes back. You look like you need the mystery in your life. Izuku rolled his eyes and handed the finished mug to one of the regulars with a practiced smile. Mei stepped up behind him, lowering her voice just enough so only he could hear. Hey, once the rush dies down, come to the back with me while I prep. I've got something to show you. Izuku glanced at her, brow raised in suspicion. This isn't another one of your totally safe gadgets, is it? She grinned, completely unbothered. No promises. He sighed, half amused, half wary. Fine. But if it explodes, I'm telling my mom that it was you. I'm not taking the blame for this one. Worth it, she said with a wink, already heading toward the stockroom. Izuku shook his head and turned back to the counter, quietly hoping whatever she had to show him was more interesting than dangerous, but with Mei, it was always a toss-up. Plus 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 plus. By day, Izuku was just another student at Mizudafu University, juggling classes, part-time shifts at his mom's cafe, and the steady hum of everyday life. He was tired, always tired, but that was the price for keeping a foot in both worlds. But when night fell over the city, everything changed. Under the blanket of darkness, Izuku shed the constraints of his ordinary life. The tired barista. The overworked student. None of that mattered when the world needed something more. Izuku had always wanted to be a hero. But without a quirk, that dream had seemed impossible. He'd been told for years that he didn't have what it took, that his place was behind the scenes, as a fan rather than a fighter. Still, his heart never wavered. Then Mei, his friend, the one who always thought outside the box, gave him the push he needed. One evening, as they sat in the cafe after hours, Mei had casually dropped her idea between tinkering with another of her devices. You've got everything it takes to be a hero, you know. No quirk? Doesn't matter. You've got determination, you've got brains, and you've got me for backup. Izuku had laughed it off then, too nervous to take her seriously. What? A vigilante? With no powers? I don't think that's a good idea, Mei. But Mei didn't back down. It's exactly the kind of idea you need. You care more than anyone else. You've been trying to help people your whole life. So why not do it for real? Her words haunted him. That night, long after Mei had gone home, Izuku lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. She was right. He didn't need to be a pro. He didn't need to have a flashy quirk or a costume. All he needed was the will to act. And so, with a mix of excitement and uncertainty, Izuku decided to take the plunge. Quietly, without anyone knowing, he slipped into the night. No grand declarations. Just a kid with a dream, hoping he could make a difference in a world that didn't think he had a place. His first night as a vigilante wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a disaster either. No fancy gear, no special skills. Just a hoodie, a mask, a few helpful items given to him from Mei, and the quiet resolve to protect people however he could. He watched the city's shadows, picked up on patterns, and learned what he could. And then he saw something. A drag deal sloppy, rushed, and out in the open. Just a couple of low-level thugs too dumb to notice how exposed they were in the alley behind a convenience store. Izuku had spotted them while cutting through the backstreets on his new patrol route. 2 men. 1 backpack. A small box passed between hands. He didn't wait. No time to think. No time to second-guess. He dropped from the fire escape, landed hard enough to twist his ankle, but pushed through the pain. Smoke pellet first, just like Mei told him. It bought him 5 seconds of confusion. Then came the stun disc Mei gifted him. She wanted Izuku to try out her babies whenever he had the chance to. The first disc struck its target, short-circuiting one of Thug's phone and causing him to flinch from the sudden jolt. A second individual lunged through the smoke, his movements wild and uncoordinated. Izuku stepped into the motion, redirecting the attacker's momentum and sending him crashing hard into a nearby dumpster. The impact left him slumped and groaning, momentarily out of the fight. But behind him, the first assailant, previously stunned, disoriented but determined, he spotted the dropped box, snatched it up, and bolted out of the alley before Izuku could react. Izuku turned just in time to see the man vanish around the corner. He considered giving chase, but the second attacker was still down and groaning, and sirens were already echoing faintly in the distance. Someone must have heard the commotion and called the police. Tension still thick in his chest, Izuku slipped into the shadows, disappearing before anyone else arrived. Sloppy? Yeah. Effective? Also yeah. The night air stung against his skin, sharp with adrenaline and cold sweat. Izuku ducked into a narrow alley 3 blocks from where it had happened. His heart thundering in his chest like it was trying to escape. He leaned back against the brick wall, hands trembling as he yanked off his mask. His breaths came in quick bursts, fogging in the air. His knuckles were scraped. One knee of his jeans was torn. Ankle twisted. But he did it. He stopped them. And now, sitting in the dark with torn gloves and a racing pulse, Izuku felt something else settle into his chest, certainty. This wasn't going to be easy. He wasn't suddenly a hero overnight. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was finally walking toward that dream again. One step at a time. Plus 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 plus. The blueprints were spread across the steel table, sharp angles and bold lines mirroring the ambition churning in Bakugo's gut. Dynamite Hero Agency, the name felt right, impactful, undeniable. He scowled at a minor structural detail, barking orders at one of the construction foremen over the phone. This had to be perfect. His agency wouldn't just be another hero office, it would be the standard. He decided to do a site check himself. The midday sun beat down on the skeletal frame of the building, the clang of hammers and the shouts of workers echoing in the air. As he surveyed the progress, his gaze drifted across the street. A small, unassuming cafe with a warm, inviting yellow awning caught his eye. Inko's Brew, the sign read in a gentle, looping script. He hadn't noticed it before in his usual tunnel vision. A sudden craving for something other than the room temp water he'd been chugging hit him. "Teeth, might as well grab a dim and drink," he grumbled, crossing the street. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as he entered, a wave of rich coffee aroma washing over him. It was a stark contrast to the dust and metal of the construction site. The air inside was thick with the comforting aroma of roasted coffee and something faintly sweet. A couple of old folks were nursing mugs in the corner, and some student type was hunched over a laptop. A young guy was behind the counter, wiping his hands on a cloth. Messy green hair that stuck out at odd angles, a scattering of freckles across his cheeks, and wide, earnest eyes that seemed to take in everything. He looked kind of cute in a nerdy sort of way. He walked up to the counter to order. "Black. No sugar," he grunted, his voice rough. The green-haired kid blinked, then nodded quickly, his hands already moving with a surprising efficiency to prepare the order. Bakugo leaned against the counter, arms crossed, observing the kid work. There was a quiet focus to his movements as he measured the grounds and tamped them down, a delicate precision that seemed at odds with his slightly nervous energy. The coffee was placed before him, the dark liquid steaming invitingly. He took a long sip. Not bad. Actually, it was DMN good. He offered a curt nod, the praise feeling foreign on his tongue. "It's good." A faint flush colored the kid's cheeks. "Thanks. I try to get it right. You wouldn't believe how many people order black coffee and then load it up with sugar." A small smirk tugged at Bakugo's lips. He'd seen that plenty of times. "I'm not most people." "No, I guess you're not," the kid murmured, his gaze following Bakugo as he turned to leave. Then, we noticed the kid as he practically leaped over the counter, his earlier quietness replaced by sudden, intense enthusiasm. Wait, is that the limited edition All Might keychain from when he was in the States?" Bakugo stopped dead, turning back, genuinely surprised by the outburst. What was with this random extra and his All Might obsession? Yeah, it's from his early days. Most people don't even recognize the old costume. The kid's eyes were practically shining. That's amazing. Seriously, how did you even get that? It was a promo from a US tour, right? Only 100 were made. He shrugged, a little taken aback by the kid's fervent excitement. Got it from some extra overseas. Didn't think much of it. Didn't think much of it? The kid repeated, his voice incredulous. You have no idea. The old insignia on the gloves, the slightly different hero suit, it's a piece of history. A low huff of amusement escaped Bakugo. Didn't peg you for a hero nerd. The kid flushed, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. Sorry. It's just, All Might's kind of a big deal to me. I've read all the interviews, seen all the early footage. That keychain is legendary. Bakugo stared at the kid for a moment. That intense admiration was oddly familiar, though he couldn't place why. Yeah. He's mine too. He hadn't really thought about it in those terms in years. He doesn't get enough credit for his early days, you know? The kid continued, his voice softer now, almost reverent. Before the whole symbol of peace thing. Just raw power and that unbreakable smile. He was still figuring things out, but he was already saving people. Something in the kid's earnest words struck a chord, a flicker of understanding he hadn't expected from a random coffee shop employee. Yeah, Bakugo conceded, the word feeling strangely weighty. Guess so. The kid opened his mouth, probably about to launch into some detailed analysis of All Might's early fighting style. Bakugo cut him off. He had an agency to get off the ground. Thanks for the coffee, he grunted, turning back towards the door. He could feel the kid's intense gaze on his back as he left. Just some random hero fan working at the local coffee joint. Nothing more. But as he crossed the street, the taste of that surprisingly good black coffee lingered, and the image of the kid's earnest, All Might-obsessed face stuck in his mind. He'd probably end up coming back for the coffee. Nothing else. Definitely nothing else. Plus 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 plus. The agency was buzzing with the barely contained chaos of its early days. Kirishima was enthusiastically directing furniture movers, his shouts of encouragement echoing through the spacious main hall. Mina was already trying to personalize her office space with colorful posters and a rapidly growing collection of quirky gadgets. Zero was meticulously organizing equipment in the training room, his tape dispensers whirring rhythmically. Kaminari was probably being useless somewhere. Bakugo was headed into a meeting room for a strategy meeting with a few established pro-heroes, a necessary evil, and sat down in an open chair. Present were Kamui Woods, his wooden limbs crossed patiently, Mount Lady, looking slightly bored as she scrolled through her phone, and Death Arms, his muscular arms also folded across his chest. The situation, dynamite, Kamui Woods began, his voice calm but firm, concerns a recent uptick in, well, less conventional villain activity. More focused on causing a stir than actual large-scale damage, thankfully. But the media is having a field day. Yeah, they're calling them the scene stealers or something equally ridiculous, Mount Lady chimed in, rolling her eyes. Honestly, half of them seem more interested in their social media presence than actually robbing banks. Bakugo leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a familiar scowl etched on his face. So? They're weaklings. Squash 'em and be done with it. What's the DMN issue? The issue, Death Arms rumbled, his gaze serious, is that before any of us can effectively respond, this vigilante intervenes. They're surprisingly efficient, shutting these incidents down quickly. But it's creating problems. Problems like what? Bakugo's brow furrowed, a spark of irritation igniting within him. It's making the official heroes look incompetent, Kamui Woods explained, his tone measured. The public starts to question our response times if some unknown can handle things before we arrive. It breeds distrust. And it could encourage others to take the law into their own hands, Mount Lady added, finally looking up from her phone. We can't have a bunch of amateurs running around, potentially making things worse. Lawlessness is a slippery slope, Bakugo, Death Arms stated firmly. It undermines the authority we've worked hard to establish. Bakugo snorted, a sharp, dismissive sound. Sounds like a bunch of prima donnas to me. Some idiots taking out the trash before you can get your buttes in gear? One less annoyance for the rest of us. However, Kamui Woods continued, his gaze unwavering, there are concerns about this vigilante's methods. We have no intel on their identity, their training, or their motivations. They could be a danger themselves. If they were a real threat, they wouldn't be wasting their time on these attention-seeking clowns, Bakugo scoffed. Probably just some reject with a savior complex. They'll either get caught or realize how much of a pain it is and give up. We were hoping, Mount Lady said, a hint of a plea in her voice, that you, with your direct approach, might look into this. Maybe put a stop to it before it escalates further. Bakugo's crimson eyes narrowed dangerously. Me? Waste my DMN time chasing some shadow dweller? I've got a hero agency to build, actual villains to pulverize. This sounds like a you problem, not a dynamite problem. He pushed back from his seat, chair scraping against the floor. This is a DMN waste of time. I'm out. He walked out, zeroed in on what actually mattered. Wasting time on some self-styled vigilante lurking in the shadows wasn't just beneath him, it was laughable. As long as the guy wasn't interfering with his work or causing real damage, let him play hero in the alleys. The veterans could worry about public image and PR nightmares. Bakugo had a legacy to build, one forged through force, precision, and results. Let them complain. Their noise was nothing compared to the momentum of his rising name. Plus 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 plus. The rhythmic hum of the building's ventilation system was the only sound accompanying Bakugo as he hunched over the glowing schematics on his makeshift desk. Hours had bled into each other since Kirishima and the others had called it a night, but Bakugo was wired, his mind racing with details of security protocols and structural integrity. His comm unit chirped, dragging him from his focus. It was a message from Tsukachi. Dynamite. The detective's voice was its usual gravelly tone. We've had some reports of, let's just say, unsettling activity near your agency's location tonight. Nothing concrete, but we'd appreciate a quick flyby, a show of your presence. Bakugo's teeth gritted. Fine. This better be good. He clipped the comm back onto his belt and propelled himself out of the shattered window frame, a temporary hero entrance, still under construction, the force of his quirk sending him soaring into the inky sky. The city unfolded beneath him, a glittering sprawl of artificial light punctuated by pockets of deep shadow. He scanned the rooftops, his enhanced hearing picking up the distant sirens and the closer, more unsettling whispers of the night. It was in the narrow chasm of an alleyway, choked with overflowing dumpsters, that he saw him. A figure cloaked in dark, functional gear, scaling a rusted fire escape with an almost unnerving silence. There was a quiet efficiency to their movements that snagged Bakugo's attention. You. His voice, amplified by the night, echoed off the brick walls. He blasted towards the adjacent rooftop, landing with a thunderous boom, sparks erupting from his gauntlets. What the hell do you think you're doing creeping around here? The figure froze mid-climb, turning swiftly. The meager light filtering from a nearby street lamp cast long shadows, obscuring their features. But the lean silhouette, the coiled tension in their stance, a jolt of suspicion, a prickle of something almost familiar, shot through Bakugo. Before the figure could respond, a pair of figures stumbled out of a darkened doorway below, their drunken shouts slicing through the night air. The unsettling activity, no doubt. The dark figure moved with startling speed. They blurred into motion, disarming the stumbling drunks with swift, precise movements and what looked like rolls of capture tape. Bakugo watched for a split second, then his hero instincts, and a surge of territorial anger, kicked in. This must be the vigilante they were talking about. And he was operating in his soon-to-be territory. Get out of my way, you demon extra. Bakugo roared, leaping down into the alleyway, explosions crackling in his palms. This is pro-hero work. The hooded figure, clearly caught off guard by Bakugo's sudden, explosive entrance, reacted instantly. They spun, throwing a quick, surprisingly forceful jab that connected squarely with Bakugo's jaw. The impact rocked Bakugo back a step, a guttural grunt escaping his lips. "The hell?" "Oh, sorry." The muffled voice stammered, laced with a distinct note of panic. The figure stumbled back, their wide eyes, visible for a fleeting moment in the dim light, filled with what looked like genuine alarm. Before Bakugo could unleash a retaliatory blast, the figure deployed a thin, wiry line that shot upwards, anchoring to a higher rooftop. With a swift, practiced motion, they swung across the alleyway, disappearing into the darkness beyond before Bakugo could even fully process the audacity of what had just happened. Bakugo stood in the alleyway, his hand instinctively going to his throbbing jaw. He stared at the empty space where the vigilante had vanished, then down at the two tied-up drunks groaning at his feet. Did that demon amateur just punch me?" he snarled, a slow, simmering rage beginning to boil within him. He, Dynamite, had just been blindsided by some shadow-dwelling nobody who then had the nerve to apologize before making a clean getaway. His teeth ground together. The humiliation was almost as infuriating as the unexpected pain. The image of those wide, momentarily visible eyes flashed in his mind, a fleeting glimpse that only intensified his fury. "That demon coward," he growled, sparks flaring dangerously from his gauntlets. "If I ever see that hooded freak again, they're going to learn exactly what happens when you lay a hand on the #1 hero. I'll blast them back to the Stone Age." He would find this vigilante, and they would regret ever crossing his path. The lingering sting on his jaw served as a constant, infuriating reminder of the night's humiliation. Bakugo scowled at the city lights twinkling below, a silent promise echoing in his chest. He'd let the deepening vigilante slip away, a rookie mistake born of surprise and sheer disbelief. It wouldn't happen again. He activated his calm, his voice a low growl. "Tsukachi, the unsettling activity is dealt with. 2 drunks. But there was also a vigilante. Hooded. Moves fast. Efficient. You need to put out a priority alert. Find them." Tsukachi's surprised voice crackled back. "A vigilante? Involved in this? You didn't apprehend them, Dynamite?" Bakugo's grip tightened on his gauntlet. "They got away. But mark my words, detective. The next time I see that shadowy BSTRD, they won't be so lucky. They made a mistake tonight. A big one." He cut the connection, the silence of the night punctuated only by the distant wail of a siren. The image of those wide, apologetic eyes flickered in his mind again, a frustratingly persistent image that only fueled his burning desire for a rematch. He wouldn't forget that voice. He wouldn't forget that feeling of being sucker-punched and made to look like a fool. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Plus 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 plus. The cafe was quiet in the early morning haze, bathed in soft amber light from the rising sun. Izuku moved on autopilot, dark circles under his eyes and a slight wince in every step as he prepped the counter. The hiss of the espresso machine was louder than usual, grating against the throb in his head. He hadn't slept. Not really. His mind kept looping it over and over. The punch. The shocked look on Dynamite's face. The muffled, "Oh, sorry," that had slipped from his own mouth before he bolted. It chased him through the restless night, right into the groggy morning as he trudged to the cafe. Izuku rubbed his eyes, stifling a yawn, keys jangling faintly in his hand as he reached the front door. He blinked blearily at the lock, but something tugged at his attention just across the street. His breath caught. The Hero Agency. Finished. The scaffolding was gone. The sleek, glass front gleamed in the early morning light, the polished Dynamite logo unmistakable, bold against the clean facade. And it hit him hard that the man he'd sucker-punched last night wasn't just any hero. He was the hero. Izuku fumbled the keys, nearly dropping them before forcing himself to focus, unlocking the cafe door with trembling fingers. He quickly flipped the sign from closed to open, the little clatter snapping him back to reality. Deep breath, Izuku. Just get through the morning rush. Keep your head down. Whatever you do, don't panic. He made his way to the front counter, eyes flicking up toward the door, his gaze inevitably drifting past it to the shiny new agency building across the street. It gleamed in the early light, bold and impossible to ignore, no matter how hard he tried to focus on the empty cafe instead. He'd punched Dynamite in the face. And now the dynamite was working across the street from the cafe. Izuku leaned both hands on the counter and groaned into them. Izuku turned back toward the front window, eyes drifting to the bold lettering across the street. Dynamite Hero Agency, now open. He had a feeling easy wasn't going to last long. The soft jingle of the bell above the door barely gave Izuku time to brace himself before the morning rush came crashing in. Within minutes, the front of the cafe was full half-asleep students, flustered office workers, and the occasional sidekick grabbing their caffeine fix before patrol. Izuku pulled his focus in tight. Steam. Mark orders. Pour shots. Smile. His body moved on instinct, each task a temporary distraction from the anxiety gnawing at his stomach. He couldn't afford to mess up today. Not with his brain fogged by the memory of a smoking alley and Dynamite's voice echoing in his ears. Inko's Delight Extra Foam, he called, sliding a mug down to a waiting customer. As if on cue, his mother's voice floated from the kitchen. Thank you, sweetie. That's one of our best sellers. Don't forget to suggest the honey ginger scones today. Inko Midoriya bustled around the back of the cafe, flowers smudged on her cheek, humming a soft tune as she pulled trays from the oven. She peeked around the doorway for a moment, smiling warmly at the packed space. And her son managing it all. You're doing great, Izuku, she called. But remember, once the rush slows down, you need to leave by 9:15 if you want to make it to class on time. I know, Mom. Izuku replied, a little breathless as he handed off a drink. I've got it. Just making sure. I packed your notes from the kitchen table and put a protein bar in your bag. Don't skip breakfast again. A regular waved from the counter, and Izuku offered a distracted smile, scrawling their name on a to-go cup. He pushed the voice in his head aside, the one whispering, you punched a pro hero last night and now you're pretending to be normal. He just had to make it through the morning. Focus. Breathe. Everything was fine. Probably. Hopefully. Just coffee. Just class. Just one normal day. The bell over the door jingled. Izuku barely glanced up, busy pulling a fresh shot of espresso until he caught a flicker of blonde in the corner of his eye. There he was again. The blonde guy with the cool All Might keychain. He stepped up to the counter, sharp red eyes landing right on Izuku. Hey nerd, the blonde drawled, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. And nerd. Izuku sputtered, blinking up at him. What's that all about, huh? The guy let out a short laugh, low and amused. Only a nerd would know what you did about my keychain the other day. Izuku's cheeks flushed faintly as he fumbled for a to-go cup, pen already in hand. Right, what can I get you today? Black. Large, Bakugo answered smoothly, resting his forearms on the counter. Name for the cup? Izuku asked, forcing his voice to sound casual as he glanced up. When he thought about it, he realized he'd never actually asked his name last time. This would be an easy, normal way to find out without making it weird, right? Just part of the job. Totally normal. Not at all. The blonde snorted. Bakugo. Then clears his throat, Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku carefully scrawled Katsuki across the cup, but the second the name settled in his mind, something snapped into place. Katsuki. Bakugo Katsuki. His eyes flicked up, sharp red eyes, ash blonde hair, a resting scowl that somehow still fit even when he was smirking. Wait a second. Izuku's breath caught. Bakugo Katsuki. Dynamite. The dynamite. His hand twitched, almost dropping the cup. Holy crap. Holy crap. He was standing right here, across the counter. Wire. Izuku's voice pitched up a little, eyes wide. You're Bakugo Katsuki, right? Dynamite. Katsuki raised a brow, looking amused. Yeah. So. Izuku practically sparkled, pulling a pen from his apron pocket without thinking. I have this. Look. He held up a limited edition dynamite-themed pen, complete with tiny gauntlet details. I love your work. Your rescue record's incredible, And that takedown of Jawbreaker last month was amazing and… He caught himself mid-ramble, flushing furiously. Sorry. I'm a big fan. Katsuki gave a low chuckle, shaking his head. You're a demon nerd, all right. Izuku laughed nervously, heart pounding. Oh no. Oh no. This was the same man he'd accidentally punched in the jaw last night. He's same pro-hero he'd escaped from by the skin of his teeth. Deep breaths, Izuku. Play it cool. Izuku scrawled Bakugo's name on the cup quickly, hands slightly shaky, but he managed before moving to prep the coffee, his heart thudding a little too fast as he repeated the name in his head. Bakugo. Just a customer. Just coffee. Totally normal. So, Katsuki drawled, drumming his fingers lazily, you always geek out over hero merch? Or is it just to me? Izuku laughed nervously, eyes wide. I mean, it's not every day you see that limited overseas all-might keychain. And then meet, he cut himself off mid-sentence, the words catching in his throat. His eyes locked onto Katsuki's face, the sharp red eyes, the familiar smirk, the spiky blonde hair. Dynamite. Oh God. He coughed, trying to cover up his panic. Sorry. I'm just a fan. Katsuki smirked, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his gaze, like he could tell something was up. Figured. Izuku's fingers fumbled slightly as he poured the coffee, desperately willing himself to breathe, to focus. He could feel his pulse thudding in his ears. Keep it cool, Izuku. He doesn't know. He can't know. So, you work here full-time or what? Katsuki asked, voice still casual, but his eyes narrowed just slightly, studying Izuku's jittery movements. Part-time. Izuku blurted, almost too quickly. I go to Mizudafu University. This is just a side job. His nervous smile stretched too tight as he slid the coffee across the counter. Here you go. Large black, Katsuki. Katsuki took the cup, pausing just a little too long, his eyes flicking over Izuku's face, reading every nervous twitch. You good, nerd? Katsuki asked, brows lifting slightly. You're acting weird. Izuku felt the panic rising sharp in his chest. Emmy? I'm fine. Totally fine. Just, busy morning. Plus, everything's fine. Katsuki snorted softly, lips quirking up. Okay. Izuku sagged behind the counter, gripping the edge to keep himself upright. His heart was racing so fast it hurt. You punch Dynamite. You're serving coffee to Dynamite. And he's standing right there. You punch Dynamite. You're serving coffee to Dynamite. And his brand new hero agency is right across the street from your mom's cafe. Izuku gripped the counter so hard his knuckles went white, his breath catching in his throat as Katsuki eyed him with concern as he sipped his coffee, standing just a few feet away. The bell over the door jingled again as another customer came in, and Izuku jumped, nearly knocking over the stack of cups. Breathe, Izuku. Breathe. He could feel sweat prickling at the back of his neck. How had he not realized sooner? The spiky blonde hair, the sharp red eyes, the way he moved, even the voice. It all clicked now. Dynamite. Katsuki Bakugo. Pro-hero. The same man he'd accidentally sucker-punched in a dark alley the night before. Izuku's stomach twisted into knots. His mom's bakery cafe, the cozy, safe place he worked at every morning, was now sitting right across from a top-tier hero agency. And that hero? That pro, with all the resources and sharp instincts? He was standing right there, sipping his black coffee, watching Izuku like he was already piecing something together. Relax, nerd, Bakugo said with a little smirk, noticing Izuku's pale face. You look like you're gonna pass out or something. I'm fine. Izuku squeaked, his voice cracking embarrassingly. He grabbed a rag and started wiping down the counter furiously, avoiding eye contact. Totally fine. Busy morning, huh? Bakugo took a slow sip of his coffee, eyes narrowing slightly as he watched Izuku fumble behind the counter. You all right over there? He asked, tilting his head. You're twitchier than usual. What? Seeing a pro-hero up close too much for a little nerd like you to handle? Izuku forced a shaky smile. Nope. All good. Thanks for your order. Enjoy your coffee. See you next time. Okay, bye. Bakugo gave him a look half amused, half curious, then finally turned and headed for the door, his agency looming just beyond the cafe windows like a giant, inescapable reminder. As the bell jingled again, Izuku collapsed forward onto the counter, burying his face in his arms. Oh God! How was he supposed to keep doing this? How was he supposed to play normal when Dynamite was literally right there, every day, across the street? Just then a familiar, gentle voice that pulled Izuku's head up from where he was practically face down on the counter. "Inko Midoriya to the rescue," his mom said with a warm smile, slipping off her apron as she came out from the back kitchen. "All right, sweetheart, I've got the front. Go grab your things or you'll be late for class." Izuku blinked at her, eyes wide and a little wild. She paused, frowning slightly as she reached out to tuck a loose curl of his hair back. "Izuku, honey, you look pale. Did you even eat the protein bar I put in your bag?" I think so," he mumbled, though his mind was still spinning. "You punched Dynamite. He's right across the street. He just drank coffee here." Inko smiled softly and patted his shoulder. "Go on, sweetheart. You've been working hard all morning, and I'll handle the rest of the rush. Don't make your professor send me another email, okay?" Izuku let out a shaky breath, forcing a nod. "Why, right." He shuffled to the back, grabbing his bag and jacket, his heart hammering so loudly he was sure his mom could hear it. "Focus, Izuku. You just need to get to class. Pretend everything's normal. Pretend you didn't nearly expose yourself to a top pro hero in broad daylight." From the corner of his eye, he saw his mom expertly taking an order with her usual bright, calming presence, the one that made customers feel at home. Meanwhile, he could barely keep his own thoughts in order. Just make it through today, he told himself. Just make it through. Plus 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 plus. The glass doors of the newly finished Dynamite agency slid open with a soft hiss as Bakugo strode inside, coffee in hand, the sharp scent of fresh paint still clinging to the air. The lobby was sleek and modern minimalist furniture, dark steel beams, floor-to-ceiling windows letting in the morning sun. It wasn't completely finished, but it was enough. As he made his way toward the operations wing, the familiar voice of Eijiro Kirishima called out, "Yo, Bakugo!" Kirishima grinned as he jogged over, spotting the coffee. "Man, you went on a coffee run and didn't tell anyone?" Behind him, a couple of sidekicks perked up, clearly also eyeing the cup in Bakugo's hand. "Get your own deepening coffee," Bakugo grunted without slowing, pushing past them toward the strategy room. Kirishima laughed, unoffended. "Touchy. Must be good though, huh?" Bakugo didn't answer. He slumped down in one of the chairs, took a long sip from the cup, and let out a quiet, satisfied hum. It was good. No bitterness. Just clean, bold flavor. He stared at the cup for a moment, thumb brushing over the black sharpest scrawl where his name was written in slightly shaky handwriting. His eyes narrowed slightly as he took another slow sip. The coffee was still hot, smooth, no nonsense, just how he liked it. But it wasn't the taste that lingered on his mind. That kid. He stared at the cup, thumb absently tracing the letters of his name. The handwriting was a little uneven, like the person had been rushing or flustered. His jaw tensed slightly, not from irritation, but something he couldn't quite name. He thought back to the cafe, how the barista behind the counter had practically short-circuited when he walked in. Green eyes wide, a little too bright. Nervous hands, bouncing from task to task like he was running on caffeine and pure anxiety. And the name tag. Izuku. He'd caught it when the kid finally looked up at him, flushed, smiling too fast, like someone trying to act normal but doing a crap job of it. Bakugo took another sip of coffee, staring out the window toward the little cafe across the street. His mind kept circling back to that face. The way Izuku had fumbled the cup. The way he'd said his name. He wasn't sure what the hell his problem was. But there was something about him. That jittery energy. That soft voice. That stupidly bright smile. Bakugo clicked his tongue and looked away from the window, scowling into his coffee like it had betrayed him. Tch, whatever. It didn't mean anything. He just made good coffee. That's all. Izuku, huh? He narrowed his eyes slightly. Who's Izuku? Mina's voice cut through the air like a knife wrapped in glitter. She leaned over the table, her chin in her palm, grinning way too wide. Bakugo jerked upright, nearly sloshing his coffee. The hell? I didn't say anything about. You literally just said his name out loud, Kaminari chimed in, half laughing from where he was lacing up his boots. You were, like, whispering it all dreamy. I was not. Bakugo's voice cracked halfway to an explosion. He's just some nerd who works at the cafe, alright? Makes decent coffee. End of story. Mina waggled her brows with a mischievous grin. Ooh, Izuku? That's a cute name. She let out a teasing giggle, nudging Bakugo lightly with her elbow. I will blast all of you into next week, Bakugo growled, standing abruptly and grabbing a nearby patrol file like it had personally offended him. Shut up and get ready. Patrol starts in 10. He stalked off toward the ops board, muttering something under his breath about useless extras and their inability to mind their own DMN business. Still, as he flipped through the day's patrol zones, his eyes drifted just for a second toward the window. Plus 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 plus. Izuku's pen tapped against the edge of his notebook, matching the erratic rhythm of his thoughts rather. Then the professor's steady lecture. Focus. You're in class. You survived the cafe. Just take notes. Be normal. He scrawled half a sentence before. His brain derailed again. You punched Dynamite. And then served him coffee. And he talked to you. Casually. Like it was normal. Like he wasn't one of the top pro heroes in the country and you weren't a vigilante who jabbed him in the jaw last night. Midoriya, the professor called from the front of the room, snapping him back to reality. Weiss, he squeaked, sitting up straighter. I asked if you could explain the correlation between applied quirk theory and reinforced structural design. Izuku's mouth opened. Nothing came out. A few quiet snickers echoed from nearby seats. He felt his face flame. Sorry. I didn't catch that. The professor sighed, scribbling something on the digital board before continuing the lecture. Izuku sank lower in his chair. He could feel Mei watching from the next row over, her tablet already balanced on her knee. After class, she caught up to him outside the building, smirking. Your brain's still short-circuiting over Blondie, or are you just running on 2 hours of sleep and caffeine? Both, Izuku muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. It's just he came in again. This morning. I didn't expect him to talk to me. Mei snorted, grinning as she leaned against the counter. Why not? You make the best coffee in this part of town. I bet you even used the good beans for him, didn't you? That's basically flirting, Izuku. Izuku rolled his eyes, flustered. All of our coffee is made with fresh beans, Mei. And I wasn't flirting. She raised a brow. I didn't flirt. I panicked, he hissed, dragging a hand through his hair. I called him Katsuki by accident and everything. Mei blinked. Katsuki? As in, the Katsuki? Dynamite. Izuku groaned. This. And just last night I punched him. In the face. He was definitely sad. Mei stared at him, eyes wide, then burst into uncontrollable laughter, nearly doubling over. You what? You deck Dynamite. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Mei. Izuku hissed, glancing around. Hush. You're too loud. She only laughed harder. Oh my god, Izuku, you're so dead. Izuku buried his face in his hands. Mei grinned, slinging her arm around his shoulder. Well, good news, hero nerd. If he comes back again tomorrow, you've got a second chance to panic in style. Izuku groaned as she steered him toward the student labs, his face still red with embarrassment. As they reached their usual workstation, Mei glanced sideways at him, a little more serious. Hey, you're not thinking about quitting, are you? The whole vigilante thing. Izuku blinked, surprised. What? I mean, it's terrifying sometimes. But it feels right, you know? Like something I'm supposed to be doing. If I can help even one person, if I can make a difference, even without a quirk, then yeah. I want to keep going. Mei's grin returned, full force. Hell yeah, that's what I like to hear. She dropped her bag on the workbench and pulled out her tablet, already flicking through schematics with practiced ease. Good. Because I've been cooking up some upgrades for you. A new grappling rig, lighter armor plating, and get this impact-dampening soles so your landings don't wreck your knees. Izuku smiled, genuinely this time, the tension easing from his shoulders as he leaned in. Seriously? May, that's amazing. She smirked. Of course it is. Now sit your nerdy butt down and let me walk you through the prototypes. And just like that, the panic faded into the background, replaced by familiar comfort, metal, circuits, and a friend who believed in him more than anyone else. Bakugo's boots hit the pavement with a dull thud as he landed on the rooftop of a closed department store. The city stretched out beneath him in muted tones of blue and orange. The night was unusually quiet, too quiet. He exhaled sharply through his nose, adjusting the straps on his gauntlets as he scanned the streets. His patrol was supposed to be over an hour ago, but he'd stretched it out, pacing his district in slow, deliberate loops. All because of him. The DMN vigilante with the nerve to punch a pro-hero in the face and vanish into the night like a ghost. Bakugo couldn't stop thinking about him, how fast he'd moved, how precise. The amateur had skill. Dangerous skill. He clicked his teeth, annoyed at himself more than anything. Can't have some wannabe running around screwing things up. Still, he hadn't reported him with any real detail. Something about it felt unfinished. Like he needed to see the guy again. The city remained quiet, the distant hum of traffic the only noise, until a scream pierced the silence. Bakugo's head snapped toward the sound instantly. Without hesitation, he launched himself off the roof, an explosion propelling him forward as he rocketed through the air toward the commotion. It didn't take long to find the source, a small convenience store, its front door shattered, glass littering the sidewalk. Inside, the lights flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the aisles. Bakugo landed in a crouch, eyes sweeping over the scene. The clerk and an old man were huddled on the floor, shaken but unharmed. Bakugo's gaze locked onto the would-be villain, already face down on the floor, arms tied tightly behind his back with reinforced wire, completely unconscious. "The hell?" he muttered, stepping closer. He hadn't even gotten there in time. "What happened here?" he barked, looking around. The clerk, clutching his phone like a lifeline, blinked and stepped forward. It was some guy, he stammered. Came out of nowhere. Hood, mask couldn't see his face. He moved so fast. The guy was threatening us and then this masked guy just appeared. Bakugo narrowed his eyes. Appeared? Yeah, I mean he stunned the robber, then kicked his legs out from under him, had his arms tied up before the rest of us even realized what was going on. I've never seen anyone move like that. Bakugo clenched his jaw. That sounded very familiar. And then, he asked. The clerk swallowed. He was gone. Slipped out the back or something. Just gone. You showed up, like, a second later. Bakugo cursed under his breath, staring at the unconscious thug again. This guy hadn't even stood a chance. It was clean. Precise. Exactly like before. Same vigilante. Same method. Same nerve. And once again, one step ahead of him. He let out a slow breath through his nose and glanced toward the shadowy alley behind the shop. You're starting to piss me off, he muttered. But deep down, under the irritation and bruised ego, something else twisted in his chest. Just frustration. Not just the sting of being outpaced. It was curiosity. An itch he couldn't ignore. That masked BSTRD had skill training even. This wasn't just some amateur playing hero in the dark. No, whoever it was had done this before. More than once. The precision, the restraint, the speed. And Bakugo hated that he couldn't stop thinking about it. He glanced one more time at the unconscious villain, then clenched his fists. He was going to find him. No matter how many nights it took. No matter how fast he moved or how quiet he was. He'd find the guy in the mask. And when he did, he was going to get some answers. Plus 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 plus. Izuku didn't just wake up early to open the cafe, he was up before dawn, lacing his shoes while the city still slept. Every morning began with a run through the quiet streets, lungs burning against the chill, muscles warming with each stride. Afterward, he trained in the alley behind the building, shadowboxing, strength drills, mobility work, and practicing evasive moves in front of a cracked mirror propped against the wall. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even particularly safe. But it was his routine. His way of staying sharp, of feeling like he was doing something, even if it wasn't sanctioned, even if no one ever saw it. And when it was done, he slipped back inside, cleaned up, and got to work prepping the cafe before the sun even broke the horizon. Every morning started with a run through the quiet streets of Mizudafu, the chill air biting at his cheeks, city lights flickering like stars. It cleared his head, got his blood moving. But the real work began afterward behind the cafe, in the narrow alley, where the old brick walls bore the marks of his fists and the ground was littered with the scuffs of his footwork. He set up a portable target dummy May had cobbled together out of spare support gear, half rubber, half reinforced alloy, and completely ridiculous looking. But it worked. He practiced combinations, strikes, redirections. Then came the stun discs, May's babies, as she called them. They sparked to life with a flick of his wrist, low-powered but enough to simulate pressure. He used them to force movement, dodges, timed throws. One misfire once took out a street lamp. He'd apologized to the neighborhood association with a free coffee voucher. "You better be testing those, Deku," May had told him once. "Real-world conditions only. And don't just play nice, stress test them." He did. Every morning. Even after long shifts or late-night bruises. Especially after those. It reminded him of why he kept going. Of what he was becoming. And when the sun finally crept above the horizon, he'd wipe the sweat from his brow, hide the gear under the dumpster tarp, and head back inside just in time to open the cafe. After classes, Izuku's routine didn't slow down. He'd head home or back to the cafe depending on the shift schedule, sit down with his textbooks, and knock out any homework or reports due that week. It was exhausting, balancing university work with the cafe and his nighttime activities, but he made it work. And on nights that were quiet, when the streets stayed calm and the alleyways didn't call, he'd retire to his home, roll out the worn mat in the corner of his room, and train. It wasn't flashy. Just a consistent set of bodyweight reps, resistance training, and mobility work. It was steady, focused, just like everything else he did. He hadn't noticed much change at first. It had only been a few months since he started taking it seriously again, since he made that decision to step into the shadows and act. The physical toll showed up in soreness, bruises, tighter sleeves, but he hadn't really looked. Not until May caught him rolling up his sleeves to fix a loose wire on a coffee machine. "Izuku," she said with a low whistle, squinting at his arm. "When did you get a sleeper build?" He blinked. What?" "You know," she grinned, elbowing him playfully. "The kind of muscle that sneaks up on you. Looks average until you flex, and then boom. Hidden guns. Nice." That night, curiosity got the better of him. After his workout, shirt clinging to him with sweat, he stood in front of the mirror and flexed awkwardly at first. May wasn't wrong. His shoulders looked broader. His arms tighter. His torso more defined than he remembered. He didn't look like a scrawny student anymore, not quite. He looked capable. Izuku let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. "Sleeper build, huh?" he muttered to himself. He turned off the bathroom light and headed to bed, muscles aching and mind just a little more at ease. Izuku hadn't planned on doing anything that night beyond catching up on his coursework. He'd officially taken the evening off, no patrol, no sneaking around in alleyways, just textbooks, reports, and the occasional frustrated groan into his laptop. By the time he finished, the moon was high and his stomach was growling. The leftovers at his mom's cafe didn't appeal, and he'd already had 2 muffins that morning out of sheer convenience. He needed something different. Slipping on his hoodie, he pulled the hood up over his unruly curls and made his way to the nearest convenience store a few blocks from his apartment. The street was quiet, the air cool with a breeze that hinted at early fall. The store lights glowed like a beacon, and he sighed with quiet relief as he stepped inside. It was mostly empty, just the clerk behind the counter and an old man browsing the instant noodles. Izuku wandered down the snack aisle, eyes scanning the shelves for something salty when the door chimed again. A strange-looking man stepped inside, his movements slow and deliberate, eyes scanning the store with an unsettling calm. Something about the way they moved too fast, too deliberate set Izuku's instincts on edge. His fingers tightened around the edge of a chip bag just as he shouted, "Everyone down!" The clerk let out a yelp, raising shaky hands. The old man backed into a corner. The robber brandished a knife while holding bags and barking threats. Izuku exhaled slowly, already pulling his hood tighter over his head. He tugged the makeshift face mask from his pocket just in case and slipped it on with practiced ease. No time to hesitate. He moved. Izuku was on him quick and clean. A jab to the wrist, a sweep of the leg, and the guy hit the floor hard with a grunt, the knife clattering away. Izuku restrained his hands with a plastic zip tie from the counter, muttering a quiet apology to the terrified clerk. Izuku didn't stick around. He gave a short nod to the clerk, who was still frozen in shock, and slipped out the back entrance, vanishing into the alley shadows. Only when he was several blocks away did he groan, tugging off the mask and ruffling his hair. "I didn't even get my snacks." Midterms had completely taken over Izuku's life the past week. Between exams, project deadlines, and late-night study sessions fueled by too much caffeine and not enough sleep, there hadn't been a single spare moment for patrols. He barely had time to breathe, let alone throw on a mask and sneak through the shadows. But today marked the final stretch. He just handed in his last exam, and the weight that lifted off his shoulders was nearly enough to knock him over. No more flashcards, no more highlight markers, no more cramming facts until his eyes blurred. Izuku checked the time, barely noon. He wasn't scheduled to work today, but with nothing else to do, he figured he'd swing by the cafe and lend a hand. Rather than take the bus, he decided to walk, letting the crisp air and quiet pace help him unwind from the stress of exams. As he waited at a crosswalk, a sleek, over-the-top sports car rolled up beside him, all black and orange with dark-tinted windows. The passenger side window slid down, and a familiar voice called out, "Hey, nerd." Izuku blinked, turning toward the car. Katsuki no Dynamite sat behind the wheel, leaning casually with one arm draped over the open window, looking entirely at ease in the flashy vehicle. The sight made Izuku stumble mid-step. "Are you on patrol?" he asked, eyeing the sleek, aggressive vehicle warily. That was definitely the Ground Zero, the same car Dynamite used during his patrols. His heart gave an anxious little jolt. "Maybe." "Why, planning to cause trouble?" he smirked. What?" Izuku stammered. "No. Of course not. Why would you even say that?" Bakugo chuckled, leaning back in his seat. "Relax, nerd. It's a slow day." He jerked his head toward the passenger seat. "Get in. I'll give you a ride." "Really?" Izuku's eyes lit up and he practically lunged for the door handle. "Are you sure? Will it be an issue?" He opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, a wide grin spreading across his face. "I mean, this is so cool. I'm really sitting in Ground Zero. This car is so high-tech. I remember when you—" "Whoa, slow down," Bakugo cut in, laughing. "Put on your seatbelt." "Ah yes, seatbelt of course." Izuku fumbled with the clasp, his eyes already drawn to the intricate dashboard. Bakugo noticed his gaze, a subtle smile touching his lips as he put the car in drive. "So, where are we heading?" he asked. Izuku snapped out of his trance, looking over at Bakugo. The cafe," he replied. "Do you have to work?" Bakugo inquired. "No," Izuku replied. "I just finished midterms, and there's still a whole day ahead. I figured I'd go in to help if needed." Bakugo nodded slowly. "Good timing then. I actually need to swing by the agency first to grab something. Mind the detour?" Izuku hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "Oh, sure I guess. Will it take long?" "Nah," Bakugo said, a casual shrug. "And since you're there, might as well give you the grand tour. You've always wanted to see the inside of a pro-hero agency, right, Deku?" Deku? Izuku blinked. Who's Deku? Bakugo chuckled. You are. Izuku sniffed. Where did that even come from? Bakugo shrugged. I think it suits you actually. You're so awkwardly nerdy. Izuku huffed, a faint blush creeping up his neck. I am not, he protested, though his eyes darted to the dashboard again, a clear sign of his inner nerd. And it's not fair, you just made it up. Would you rather I call you Izuku? Bakugo raised an eyebrow. Wait, how did you even know my name? I don't remember telling you. Bakugo snorted. Your name tag, nerd. Izuku blinked. He noticed that? He actually remembered? From work? Bakugo just grinned, enjoying Izuku's reaction. Doesn't matter, the nickname is sticking. Besides, he added, a hint of something softer in his voice, it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to be. He navigated the car through a familiar turn, the buildings growing taller and more imposing. Almost there. Try not to spontaneously combust with excitement when you see the agency. Trying to appear nonchalant, Izuku clutched his backpack, facing straight ahead. It was a small, silent battle against the burgeoning excitement that Bakugo's offer had ignited within him. The Ground Zero rumbled to a stop in front of a towering glass and steel building nestled between other businesses. It wasn't flashy from the outside, but the subtle presence of reinforced walls, high-tech surveillance, and the bold lettering across the front Dynamite Agency spoke volumes. Izuku stepped out of the car slowly, his eyes wide as he took in the building before him. He'd read countless articles about Dynamite's agency, memorized its layout, analyzed its cutting-edge security systems, even studied a few blurry leaked photos online. He used to walk past the front entrance, wondering what it looked like inside, imagining the bustling operations behind those sleek walls. And now, here he was getting a personal look inside, guided by Dynamite himself. Bakugo stepped around the car and motioned with a JRK of his head. Come on. Don't gawk too hard or someone'll think you're casing the place. I'm not casing anything, Izuku said quickly, falling into step beside him. It's just wow. You built all this? With help, Bakugo muttered, pushing through the front doors. The inside was sleek and professional, neutral colors, clean lines, and just enough personality to scream, Dynamite, without being gaudy. Pro-hero photos and commendations lined one wall, all framed with brutal simplicity. Staff bustled past in uniform, nodding respectfully as Bakugo passed. A few of them gave Izuku curious glances, but no one said anything. This is the front, Bakugo said casually, walking him past reception. Security's through there, and up top is ops. We've got 3 dispatch analysts, a rotating medic, and my support team in the back. Izuku tried not to let his awe show too much, but he couldn't stop the wide-eyed look as they passed a training room with reinforced glass. Inside, 2 sidekicks were sparring in a choreographed routine. One of them waved when they saw Bakugo and Izuku pass, but their attention quickly returned to the match. This place is incredible, Izuku said, finally catching his breath. You've got everything: support, intel, field training. This is way beyond what I thought a solo agency would look like. It's not solo, Bakugo said with a shrug. It's built to scale. Might bring in a few more sidekicks next year. Depends on how many rookies actually know how to keep their heads out of their buttes. They stopped in front of a sleek black door with a subtle gold nameplate. K. Bakugo, Director. I gotta grab something, Bakugo said, unlocking the office door. You can hang here. Don't touch anything. Bakugo went towards his desk, picked up a key, and went into a storage room. Izuku followed him in his office, stepping carefully like the space might bite. The office was clean but clearly lived in meticulous stacks of paperwork on one side of the desk, a half-eaten protein bar and unopened energy drink on the other. A mannequin stood in the corner clad in one of Dynamite's hero costumes, its reinforced plating catching the light like it was ready for battle at any second. Drawn by the skyline, Izuku wandered to the window. The city stretched out below in full view, endless and electric. From here, it looked smaller, more ordered. Like a stage waiting for a hero's entrance. The door creaked open again behind him. Bakubro, you forgot your comm? Mina's voice stopped short the second she saw Izuku. Kirishima appeared at her shoulder. Oh. Mina blinked. Hello. Who are you? Kirishima raised his brows. Holy crap, it was Pinky and Red Riot. Izuku's brain practically short-circuited as the two pro-heroes casually strolled into Bakugo's office. Izuku turned, slightly startled. But, I mean, Dynamite gave me a ride. I just finished midterms and he was headed this way. Mina gasped like she just uncovered a state secret. Wait, you got to ride in the Ground Zero? She leaned in, grinning. Are you two, like, dating? What? Izuku sputtered, hands flailing. No, definitely not. Kirishima laughed, nudging Mina. You're gonna give the poor guy a heart attack. But look at him. Mina whispered loudly, eyes gleaming with amusement. He's totally flustered. It's adorable. Right on cue, Bakugo came out from storage room with the item at hand. The hell's going on in here? Bakugo barked, slinging a bag over his shoulder. I said don't touch anything, not form a gossip circle. Too late, Mina said sweetly. Your secret boyfriend's already making himself cozy. Bakugo scowled, but the tips of his ears turned unmistakably pink. Izuku tried very hard not to implode on the spot. Bakugo grumbled something under his breath and stalked past them, shoving the key to his storage room into his desk drawer with a little too much force. Izuku remained glued near the window, unsure if he should move or melt into the glass. Mina, clearly enjoying herself, leaned over to Kirishima and stage whispered, I didn't know Dynamite had a type. Cute, nerdy, flustered. I approve. Izuku choked on air. I'm not. We're not. He turned to Bakugo, eyes wide. Can you please say something? Bakugo looked up, unimpressed. What do you want me to say, Deku? That you're not cute and flustered. Izuku opened his mouth, closed it again. His brain promptly blue-screened. Kirishima stifled a laugh. Alright, ease up you two. We're just messing around. He gave Izuku a kind smile. You're welcome here, man. Bakugo doesn't bring just anyone up to his office. Most of us don't even know where the spare key is. Izuku blinked. He doesn't. Mina raised a brow. Nope. He guards this place like a dragon guards treasure. You should feel very special. Bakugo slammed the drawer shut with a clang. Okay, that's enough. The three of them quieted down a bit, but Mina shot one last grin at Izuku as she turned to go. Let me know when the wedding is, yeah? No. Izuku stammered, but she was already out the door with Kirishima in tow, both of them chuckling. Left alone again, Izuku turned to Bakugo. That I'm so sorry. Bakugo sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Don't apologize for them. They're just nosy. The pause. Still, Bakugo added, glancing at him, you could have denied it a little less like a cornered raccoon. Izuku groaned. I panicked. Bakugo smirked, grabbing his keys from the desk. Come on, fluster boy. Let's get you to that cafe before Mina starts printing wedding invites. They walked out of the agency together, the glass doors sliding shut behind them. The early afternoon sun was warm, the breeze just enough to make Izuku tug his hoodie sleeves down. Thanks again, Izuku said, pausing at the curb across the street from the cafe. For showing me around. Your agency's amazing. Bakugo gave a half shrug. It's just a building. Izuku smiled anyway. Still, it meant a lot. He was about to cross when Bakugo's voice called out behind him. Hey, wait a sec. Bakugo reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Gimme your number. Izuku blinked. Huh. For patrol, Bakugo said, not quite meeting his eyes. If you're ever free and not buried in flashcards, I'll take you out. Show you how real heroes work. Izuku's face lit up like someone had flipped a switch. Why, of course. He quickly rattled off his number, heart thudding. Bakugo tapped it in, then held up the screen. Just my work line, nerd. Don't get weird. Izuku beamed. Doesn't matter. I'll take it. Bakugo rolled his eyes, but there was the faintest curve of amusement at the corner of his mouth. As the hero turned to head to his car, Izuku turned toward the cafe and practically skipped across the street, grin still plastered across his face. Plus 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 plus. What's with the lovesick Lottie stare? May teased, watching Izuku nearly drown the cup in creamer. You dreaming about someone or just rebooting your brain? Izuku blinked out of his daze, the bottle of creamer still tilted far too long. Oh crap, he yelped, quickly setting it down and grabbing a rag to wipe up the spill. May leaned against the counter, smirking like a cat with a secret. So? Gonna tell me what's got your head floating in steamed milk? Or am I gonna have to hack into your daydreams? It's nothing, Izuku muttered, cheeks pink as he scrubbed the counter. Just tired from midterms. May gave him a flat look. Please. I've seen you run on 3 hours of sleep and still calculate trajectory angles in your head. This isn't tired. You've got the face of a guy who just got a compliment from his crush and a ride in a hot car. How did you know I rode in his car? Izuku sputtered, nearly dropping the spoon in his hand. I have my ways, May said smugly, propping her chin in her palm. So? How was it? Riding shotgun in your favorite hero's patrol car. It was a Motzi. He's not my favorite. Izuku blurted, ears turning red. Sure. May smirked. And the dynamite boxers I caught you wearing once were purely coincidence, right? Izuku covered his face with both hands. May. I'm just saying, she sing-songed, spinning to face him. Aside from All Might, Dynamite's practically neck and neck for the #1 spot in your heart. So yeah, I fully support your tragic little nerd crush on Mr. Boom and Brood. Izuku nearly dropped the rag. I mean, technically we just ran into each other as I was leaving campus. It wasn't, like, a planned thing or anything. Technically, May cut in, wiggling a finger at him with a teasing grin. You're practically glowing, Izuku. Spill the details. He opened his mouth to deny it again, but then the bell above the cafe door jingled and his head snapped up instinctively. It wasn't Bakugo. Still, the moment passed and May caught it. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. Ah, I see. Someone's got it bad for Boom Boom Blondie. May, he hissed, mortified. She just cackled. Don't worry, I ship it. Plus 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 plus. Bakugo's boots crunched over broken glass as he stepped back into the narrow alleyway where he first met the BRD. He pulled the sleek, compact scanner from his jacket and powered it on the same device he'd gone back to the agency to grab when he'd brought Izuku along earlier. The nerd had practically lit up at the invitation, all wide eyes and eager. Bakugo smirked to himself at the memory. Nerd lit up like it was Christmas morning. He couldn't wait to see that expression again, especially when he finally brought him on a real patrol. Not just a quick tour. As Bakugo adjusted the scanner's settings, a low mechanical hum filled the air. The device flickered to life, casting a soft blue glow along the alley walls. Light dancing over the brick and pavement like something out of a sci-fi movie. Time to see what this so-called vigilante left behind. Let's see what you've got, mystery guy, he muttered, kneeling down near the spot where the vigilante had decked him clean across the jaw. The scanner whirred to life, sensors pulsing as it swept over the ground and air particles. He expected something. Anything. A heat trace, a signature quirk residue, a unique energy frequency. But nothing registered. Bakugo frowned. What the hell? He adjusted the sensitivity settings, widened the search radius, even walked down the length of the alley slowly. Still no trace. No hint of any active quirk usage at all. The area was as clean as a freshly scrubbed gym floor. It didn't make sense. He moved into the store next. The place was quiet now, long since cleaned up, the clerk none the wiser that Dynamite himself had returned for a second look. Crouching near the counter where the security camera had caught a blurry shot of the vigilante slamming the robber into the floor like a sack of flour. The scanner swept again. Come on, you had to use something. Strength? Speed? Emitter type. He tapped the side of the device like it might fix itself. Nothing. He decided to scan behind the convenience store and up on the roof likely spots where the vigilante might have made his escape. Still nothing. No quirk residue. No energy signature. Just brick, pavement, and frustration. The machine blinked at him, silently displaying a flat line where a quirk signature should be. Bakugo stared at it for a long moment, brows furrowed. No quirk, he murmured aloud. He didn't even realize he'd said it until the words echoed back at him, absurd and impossible. But the scanner didn't lie. Whoever the vigilante was, they hadn't used any quirk at all. Not even a passive one. No energy residue, no unique fingerprint. Not even the faintest trace. Bakugo straightened up slowly, the wheels in his mind spinning faster now. So you're telling me some quirkless lunatic clocked me, took down a robber, and vanished without a trace? He let out a short, humorless laugh. That's either guts or stupidity. He looked down at the scanner again, then up at the dark skyline. And for the first time, he felt curious. Not sad. Not insulted. Curious. Who the hell are you? Plus 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 plus. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. The agency building had long since quieted. Only the low hum of security lights and the soft clack of Bakugo's keyboard filled the silence. His desk was scattered with half-finished reports, grainy surveillance screenshots, and a city map marked with pins and scribbled notes. He leaned back, rubbing at his temples before turning back to the open file on his tablet. All of it centered around one person, the vigilante. A knock came at his door. Bakugo didn't bother looking up. It's open. The door creaked, and Kirishima stepped in, brows raised. Dude? What are you doing here? You're not even scheduled tonight. Bakugo finally glanced over, eyes tired but focused. Didn't feel like going home. Kirishima stepped further in, glancing at the mess of intel. You're working on that vigilante case again, huh? Bakugo nodded, scrolling through a timeline he'd pieced together. Yeah. I've been digging into this guy. Quite. Real careful. But he's been out there for over a year. Kirishima blinked. A year? And no one noticed. Not really. He kept it low-level basic stuff. Purse snatchers, muggers, petty thugs. The kind of crap no one writes reports on because it gets cleaned up before patrol even rolls around, Bakugo muttered, clicking on a blurry photo of a hooded figure sprinting down a fire escape. Kirishima crossed his arms. So what changed? Bakugo tapped a section of his map. This area. Lately there's been chatter locals on social media talking about a little masked guy helping out. Breaking up fights. Escorting people home. Even pulled someone out of a burning building last month. Kirishima's brows shot up. Seriously? Yeah. Still no ID, no confirmed sightings. And no quirk signature either, Bakugo added, voice tight. I scanned the alley, he clocked me in nothing. Either he's suppressing it somehow, or he's quirkless. Kirishima frowned. A quirkless vigilante? That's insane, Bakugo finished. Or stupidly brave. The two sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the realization hanging heavy in the room. Kirishima finally gave a quiet whistle. Think he's worth chasing down? Bakugo didn't answer right away. Looked down at one of the photos, grainy, distant, but familiar in some way he couldn't quite name. Then finally, yeah, he said. He's in my territory. That makes him my responsibility. Kirishima nodded, giving a short, supportive smile. Try not to knock him out the second you see him, okay? Bakugo snorted. No promises. Bakugo ended up staying the rest of the night with Kirishima, grinding through overdue reports and jumping in on a couple late patrol calls since he was already there. The agency quieted as the city began to stir, the early light of morning spilling through the windows. By the time the sun was fully up, both of them were beat slouched in their chairs, yawning between sentences. Kirishima rubbed his eyes. I just need to hang on for a couple more hours before I can clock out. Bakugo stretched, cracking his neck. Could go home, he muttered, more to himself than anything. Worry about these reports for another day. His eyes drifted to the time and a thought struck. It was early enough. The cafe should be opening by now. He stood, grabbing his jacket. You want coffee? I know a place. Kirishima blinked. Offering coffee? What's the catch? No catch, Bakugo said, already heading for the door. Just figured you could use something to keep your butt awake. My treat. You've got it bad for this place, Kirishima joked, slinging his gear over his shoulder. Bakugo didn't answer, just let a crooked smirk tug at his lips as he pushed open the doors of his agency. The early morning light caught in his eyes, golden and sharp. He pulled out his phone and fired off a message without thinking, thumbs moving fast. Dynamite. You working today, nerd? A beat later, his screen lit up. That voice. And stop calling me a nerd. Bakugo snorted. Dynamite. I call it like I see it. Anyway, I'm stopping by. Have my cup ready. And a gallon grabbing coffee for the team too. That. Got it. Hot beverage, Omega, B. Bakugo stuffed the phone back into his pocket, that same smirk lingering on his face. Something about the nerd's stupid little emojis made the morning a little less heavy. He was already picturing Izuku's face when he walked through the cafe door. Plus 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 plus. The early morning rush had begun to trickle in regulars who always ordered the same thing, half-asleep salarymen desperate for caffeine. The usual May was here as well to help, so was his mother as she was in back dealing with the pasties. Izuku moved easily behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, apron neatly tied, offering sleepy smiles and taking orders with practice speed. 2 matcha lattes, extra hot. Got it, he called, already steaming the milk. The cafe's steady hum of chatter and the hiss of steaming milk filled the air. Izuku's phone buzzed at the same moment, a message from Dynamite. He was on his way for his usual black coffee, plus extra drinks for his team. Izuku's pulse shot up. He quickly flagged May to cover the counter while he prepped Bakugo's order, heart thudding with every scoop of beans. Any second now. Speak of the hot CC devil. Dynamite stepped in like he owned the place, the morning sun hitting his ash-blonde hair just right. Red Riot followed behind him, equally recognizable in a hoodie and that unmistakable grin. The two of them had a presence that shifted the entire atmosphere of the room. Conversation dulled. A few heads turned. One woman gasped softly. Izuku could feel the collective, "Is that who I think it is?" ripple through the room like a wave. He nearly dropped the mug in his hand. Bakugo's eyes found his immediately sharp, direct, like he always knew exactly where Izuku would be. He gave a small nod, casual as ever. Izuku gripped the espresso tamp like it had personally offended him. Of course, he looks that good before 8 a.m. Of course. Hey, nerd, Bakugo added with a crooked grin that made at least 2 customers drop their jaws in the background. Yo! Kirishima beamed. I'm ready for my caffeine fix. Izuku blinked out of his stupor, barely resisting the urge to fling milk foam into the sun. Instead, he offered a shaky but genuine smile, maybe a little too sparkly this early in the morning. Hey, you're right on time. He cleared his throat as he slid over a steaming cup. Here's your usual black, no sugar. And the rest to take back to your headquarters, of course. May chimed in cheerfully, appearing beside him with the stealth of a trained ninja. She plopped down a massive to-go box with a gallon of hot coffee, a stack of cups, creamers and sugar packets. Thanks, Bakugo said, reaching for his card. Wait, dude. Kirishima stepped in front of him, phone in hand. Mina just texted. I told her where we were, and now she, Kaminari, and Siro want their own drinks. Bakugo groaned like a man personally victimized by caffeine orders. Are you kidding me? Kirishima grinned. You know how they are. Anyway, he turned to Izuku and started rattling off the list like a barista's worst nightmare. Alright, so for Mina, she wants a pink drink with extra whipped cream. Tell May to make it sparkle if possible. Literally sparkle. I think she means glitter. May gave a salute. On it. For Kaminari, it's some electric-sounding monstrosity he calls a voltage la extra espresso, caramel drizzle, and oat milk because he's sensitive. Bakugo rolled his eyes so hard it's a miracle he didn't pass out. And for Zero, 1 iced matcha with honey, almond milk, and a side of literally any pastry you've got that isn't chocolate. Izuku scribbled it all down with wide eyes. I got it. It might take a few minutes. Take your time, bro, Kirishima said. We've hijacked your morning already, what's a few more minutes? Bakugo muttered something about needing a second coffee just to deal with his own friends. As they waited for their orders at the cafe counter, Kirishima leaned against it, eyeing Bakugo from the corner of his eye. So, he said, keeping his voice low, do you really think this vigilante thing is that big of a deal? I mean, the guy's quirkless, right? What's the worst he could do? Bakugo's eyes flicked toward him, sharp and serious. That's exactly why it's a big deal. Kirishima blinked. Huh. Bakugo crossed his arms. The guy has no quirk, and he's still out there throwing himself in front of villains. Purse snatchers, convenience store robbers, muggers. He's jumping into fights without any real backup, no protection, and no idea what the hell he's doing long term. That's not brave. That's reckless. Kirishima frowned thoughtfully, but Bakugo wasn't done. If he gets hurt or worse, it's on us. Heroes are supposed to protect people, not sit around while some idiot plays hero in a hoodie. And if villains catch wind that there's a vigilante with no powers causing problems, they're gonna see him as a joke. Or a target. He glanced out the cafe door, jaw tight. Plus, he muttered, he's been doing this for almost a year without being caught. That means he's smart, careful, strategic. That's not some bored college kid screwing around. That's someone who means it. Kirishima nodded slowly. I get it now. It's not just about what he's doing, it's about how much he's doing it, and how easily it could go bad. Bakugo grunted. Exactly. One screw-up, and he's either dead or someone else's. And I'm not letting that happen in my territory. From behind the counter, Izuku's hands trembled around a mug. He almost dropped it. He turned around just in time, clutching the tray with their drinks and holding his expression steady. Here you go, he said, placing the drinks gently on the counter. 1 sparkling sugar overload, 1 voltage heart attack la, 1 matcha honey. Bakugo's gaze snapped to him, something flickering behind his eyes. You okay? He asked, voice low, concern buried under the usual gruff tone. Izuku straightened quickly. Why, just a busy morning. Next time, he said with a smirk, grabbing his drink, I'm texting you to tag along on an actual patrol, not just to play my personal barista. Izuku blinked, then smiled. I can't wait. With a nod from Kirishima and a final smirk from Bakugo, the two heroes headed back into the morning bustle, arms full of coffee and conversation already shifting to their next stop. As the bell jingled softly behind them, Mei stepped up beside Izuku, wiping her hands on her apron. You're gonna have to be a lot more careful, she murmured, not looking at him. If you don't plan on getting caught playing the neighborhood's favorite quirkless vigilante. Izuku let out a breath, quiet but steady. I know, he said. I really do. But his eyes stayed on the door a few seconds longer, heart pounding harder than it should have. His thoughts buzzed louder than the machines around him. He never meant for the whole double life thing to spiral out of control. It was supposed to be simple, low-key. Step in where he could, stay in the shadows, make a difference without drawing attention. But now, Dynamite was texting him, talking about patrols, pulling him in closer. And worse, he was investigating the vigilante, and already knew one dming truth. He didn't have a quirk. How did he find out? His stomach twisted with something that felt like guilt and something that felt an awful lot like excitement. Behind him, Mei resumed humming softly as she prepared another order, her words lingering in the air like smoke. Be more careful. Izuku dragged in a breath, straightened his apron, and got back to work. Whatever came next, he could feel it closing in, and whatever waited ahead, he wasn't sure he was ready. It started with hero talk. Bakugo had texted him the night after their cafe run something quick about a patrol route and a string of petty crimes popping up near the West Sector. Casual. Professional. The kind of thing you'd expect from a pro hero to a very unofficial sidekick. Izuku's grip slipped the moment that first message buzzed and he barely caught his phone before it hit the floor. Fanboying over pro heroes of their childhood. After that, the messages came more often. Sometimes it was updates about the Vigilante investigation, fanboying over pro heroes of their childhood, and other times, it was a blunt, "You still alive, nerd?" at midnight, or a blurry photo of a villain half tied to a lamppost with the caption, "Caught this dumbass. If this is the best the city's got, I'm gonna start patrolling in my sleep." Izuku didn't know how to respond to that one. He spent 20 minutes typing and deleting messages before settling on, "Remind me never to get on your bad side." He meant to explain the most effective way to tie a restraint knot when capturing someone, but in hindsight, probably sounded like a confession. Now, every time his phone buzzed, Izuku jumped. His heart would leap, and he'd fumble to grab it, half expecting it to be Bakugo, half hoping it wasn't. It didn't help that the messages had started to shift. Less about patrols. Casual. A joke about someone trying to fight with a rubber duck quirk. A photo of Kirishima asleep with a donut on his face. Depending on the day, Izuku would give an offhand, "You did good today," that would have Bakugo staring at the message until the screen dimmed. Either couldn't decide if this was exciting or terrifying. Maybe both. Izuku quickly learned that Bakugo had a secret weakness: praise. Especially after a successful takedown or a rescue. Sometimes Izuku would catch the footage on the news before Bakugo even mentioned it, and he'd shoot him a quick text like, "You were amazing out there." Without fail, Bakugo would FaceTime him minutes later, still in his hero costume, face streaked with grime from the incident, but, unfairly, still ridiculously attractive. "You really think so, nerd?" he'd ask, eyes sharp but voice just a little too hopeful. At first, Izuku was confused by the calls, but he always confirmed it. Yes, he did mean it, and yes, he really thought the explosive maneuver or the crowd control was impressive. Every time, Bakugo would try to act cool, brushing it off with a grumble about working on his public image, but the faint blush on his face told another story. Izuku couldn't help but smile. For someone so loud and proud, Bakugo got adorably flustered when praised by him. It was cute. Plus 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 plus. Every morning like clockwork, Bakugo strolled into the cafe, sometimes alone, sometimes flanked by one of his rowdy friends or junior sidekicks. Izuku had grown used to the sound of the door chime, followed by that familiar gravel-edged voice ordering, "The usual." But it wasn't just coffee anymore. Bakugo had started telling him things. Little snippets from his patrol's villains he chased, patterns he noticed, areas that had been suspiciously quiet or unusually active. He shared more than he probably realized, chatting casually as if it didn't matter. But to Izuku, it mattered a lot. Not just because they were growing closer and learning more about each other, but those details were also gold. They let him plan his own routes better, time his movements, and steer clear of Dynamite's usual beats if needed. He knew where not to be and when. It gave him room to act quietly, in the background, just like he always had. He still kept to smaller crimes: muggings, shoplifters, purse snatchers. Anything bigger than that he left to the pros. Without a quirk, he didn't have the luxury of recklessness. But he made his presence known where he could, a blur in the shadows, a fast-moving hooded figure that showed up just long enough to make someone think twice about committing a crime in his part of town. So far, the system worked. Izuku stayed careful. Bakugo stayed unaware. And every morning, when Dynamite walked in for his coffee, Izuku would hand it to him with hands as steady as he could manage and a small smile, all while pretending he hadn't spent the night sweeping the city in the dark. Plus 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 plus. Izuku's sneakers hit the pavement in a steady rhythm, the early sun casting long shadows across the sidewalk. His hoodie was pushed back slightly, earbuds in, breath controlled as he rounded the corner near the park. He'd slept in a little rare, but well-earned after the week he'd had. A day off meant he could jog without rushing, without worrying about making it to class or the cafe on time. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He slowed, swiping it open without breaking stride. Dynamite. Didn't see you at the cafe this morning. You good, nerd? Izuku blinked, a surprised laugh slipping out as he jogged in place on the sidewalk. He quickly typed back. Izuku. I'm good. Day off. Slept in a little, out on a run now. Carrot, oh carrot. Thanks for checking on me? Almost immediately, another buzz. Dynamite. Don't read into it, I just figured you got kidnapped or something stupid. Izuku grinned, shaking his head. Izuku. No kidnappings today. Just cardio. Sorry I missed your usual. I'll make it up to you tomorrow. There was a pause before Bakugo's next message. Dynamite. You better. Izuku chuckled again, pocketing the phone and continuing his jog, heart a little lighter, cheeks a little pinker. It was probably just Bakugo being Bakugo. But still he noticed. And that mattered more than Izuku wanted to admit. Izuku had just slowed to a walk near the edge of the park, catching his breath, when his phone buzzed again. Dynamite. What are you doing tonight? Izuku's brows lifted in surprise. He wiped sweat from his forehead, tapping out a reply as he started walking again. Izuku. Nothing? The pause. Dynamite. Got a slow day at the agency. Figured it's about DMN time we hit a patrol together. Like I promised I would. Izuku's heart stuttered in his chest. He actually had to read it twice just to believe it. Wait, really? You're inviting me on a patrol? That wasn't just talk? Dynamite. Dude, don't make me regret it. I'll give you some time to get ready and pick you up. I'll text you the meet point later. Izuku. I can meet you at the agency. I don't live too far from it. Dynamite. Okay. Izuku couldn't stop the grin that spread across his face. It was happening. He stood frozen, phone clutched tightly in both hands, heart pounding like he'd just run a marathon. He spun on his heel and headed home, adrenaline sparking through his veins like fire. Because tonight wasn't just another night on the streets. It was a night with dynamite. Plus 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 plus. Bakugo was interested in the nerd, to say at least. He told himself it was casual, that he was just bored. But it wasn't just that. Truth was, Bakugo liked hearing from Izuku. He liked the way the nerd would ramble about pro heroes, get flustered when he got a compliment, or light up over the smallest things. What really got him, though, was how genuine Izuku was. When he talked about something he loved, some obscure piece of hero tech, a cool new strategy, or his favorite hero, he didn't hold back. There was this raw, honest excitement in the way he spoke, like he couldn't help but share what he felt. Bakugo wasn't used to that. Not from other people. Not even from himself. And maybe, that's why he kept texting him. He also really liked the color of Izuku's eyes. Bakugo would catch himself hitting the video call button more than he'd admit just to get a glimpse of the nerd's face. The freckles, the way his eyes lit up when he talked, those diamond green eyes. Green was definitely becoming his favorite color. Work had picked up, and the promise to take Izuku on patrol kept slipping further down Bakugo's list. Still, the nerd never brought it up or asked about it, and Bakugo was quietly grateful for that, even if the guilt was starting to gnaw at him. It was a slow day, and Bakugo found himself thumbing through his phone out of habit. No texts from Izuku. He also didn't see him in the cafe this morning either. No flustered greeting. No green-haired barista blurting out drink orders too fast. Instead, he got Nerd, Parental Edition. The woman looked just like him if Izuku had been a middle-aged mom with a fondness for cat pins. Bakugo didn't even need her to introduce herself. The resemblance was stupid obvious. He looked just like his mom. He had his mom's eyes. And somehow, that made Izuku even more annoyingly cute. And that made something in Bakugo's chest ache in a way he didn't want to think about. God, he was losing it. Bakugo pulled out his phone, thumbs tapping before he could overthink it. Izuku hadn't been at the cafe that morning, something he definitely noticed. Which meant the nerd had the day off, right? And for once, Bakugo wasn't drowning in agency work either. If there was ever a time to finally make good on that patrol promise, this was it. He shot Izuku a quick text, And sure enough, the nerd confirmed he had the day off. So Bakugo asked if he wanted to finally tag along on a patrol. Izuku's response came fast. He said yes. Bakugo set his phone down face first on the desk, but the smirk tugging at his lips refused to go away. Right on cue, there was a knock at the door. "Yo, boss man," Ciro's voice called as he peeked in. "What's with the sunshine smile? You win the lottery or finally ask your crush out?" Bakugo rolled his eyes, but the corner of his mouth twitched. "Shut up, tape face." Ciro grinned wider. "So it was a crush thing. Get out before I staple you to the wall." Ciro didn't budge. If anything, he leaned further into the doorway with a grin that screamed, "I know something you don't want me to know." "Oh," he said, dragging the sound out. "It's the barista, isn't it? The green-haired one with the cute apron and big green doe eyes? What's his name again?" "Izuku." Bakugo looked up sharply. "Don't. That is his name. I knew it." Ciro snapped his fingers like he just solved a murder case. "Dude, you've been stopping by that cafe every morning like clockwork. And don't think we didn't notice how you actually smile in there." "It's coffee. Coffee makes people not commit murder," Bakugo muttered, deadpan. Right, Ciro nodded. "And I bet texting him makes you want to write poetry and pet stray cats too?" Bakugo chucked a pen in his direction. Ciro dodged it effortlessly, still grinning. "I'm just saying," Ciro added as he slipped out the door, "if this is you being all domesticated, I fully expect wedding invites by next month. Don't you have a wall to stick yourself to or something?" Bakugo snapped, but his ears were pink. And once the door clicked shut, he glanced at his phone again. The corner of his mouth tugged upward, small, unguarded, and completely involuntary. He was definitely smiling again. Plus 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 plus. Izuku stood just outside the gates of the agency, hands stuffed into his hoodie pockets, rocking on the ball of his feet. The sun was beginning to dip low, casting long golden shadows across the sidewalk. His heart thudded with a mix of anticipation and nerves, not exactly the calm he wanted to project, but it was hard to stay composed when you were about to go on patrol with dynamite. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, already guessing who it was. "May Gear. Patrol date with Mr. Boom Boom? Smirking face, be careful out there, Zuzu. And for the love of caffeine, don't accidentally out yourself. Also, take notes. I want to know what kind of gear these pros are using. Eyes." Izuku sighed with a soft smile and typed back quickly. "Izuku, teacup without handle. I'll be careful. And it's not a date. Greater than over equal to less than over equaled. But I'll keep an eye out for any cool tech, promise." Just as he hit send, he heard the low, familiar rumble of a very specific engine. His heart stuttered. The Ground Zero rolled up to the curb like a beast on four wheels, sleek and loud and impossible to ignore. The passenger window lowered, and there he was, Bakugo, one arm resting casually on the door frame, expression unreadable under the dimming sky. "Get in, nerd." Izuku practically bounced on his toes as he opened the car door and slid into the passenger seat, clutching his messenger bag like it was his lifeline. The interior of the car still smelled faintly of smoke and leather, and the soft glow of the dashboard lit Bakugo's profile in sharp angles. "You look like a deepening golden retriever," Bakugo muttered, side-eyeing him as he pulled away from the curb. "Calm down before you start wagging your tail." Izuku flushed. "I'm just excited. I mean, it's my first official patrol with a pro, and it's you, and well, it's kind of a big deal for me." Bakugo smirked but didn't look away from the road. "You're lucky I don't make you run laps around the block just for saying that out loud." Izuku pouted, but his eyes were bright. "You wouldn't. Try me." The banter came easily now. Izuku's nerves started to settle as the car zipped through the city, the buildings slowly shifting from high-rises to older, quieter streets. He glanced sideways at Bakugo, who had one hand on the wheel and the other resting comfortably on the center console. For all his usual sharpness, he seemed calmer than usual. Relaxed. focused in a way that felt different from their brief cafe encounters or chaotic first meetings. "You know," Bakugo said suddenly, eyes still forward, "you don't gotta look like you're about to burst into flames every time we hang out." "I don't," Izuku objected, very much looking like he might do exactly that. Bakugo scoffed. "You do. But, whatever. It's kinda funny." That earned a quiet, flustered laugh from Izuku as he turned to the window, hiding his grin. He didn't see Bakugo glance at him again, softer this time. Truth was, Bakugo didn't mind the excitement. He liked seeing someone look at Patrol the way he used to. And maybe, just maybe, he liked that it was Izuku sitting beside him blushing, babbling, and still somehow making him feel like something about this night was gonna matter. "All right, Deku," he said, flicking on his blinker. "Let's go show you what real hero work looks like." Just as Izuku was about to ask another question about the patrol route, the car's radio crackled to life. "Yo, Dynamite, you picking this up?" It was Kaminari, his voice sharp but with a familiar edge of chaos. Bakugo leaned forward slightly, thumbing the radio. "What is it, Chargebolt? We got a situation in Sector, some nutjobs using a quirk to inflate furniture like giant size, then launching it down the main road like projectiles. Civilians are scrambling, traffic's a mess, and Ciro just got hit with a flying love seat." In the background, Ciro could be heard yelling, "It had cup holders. I almost died from a cup holder." Bakugo's eyes flicked to the GPS mounted near the dash. "We're only 6 blocks out," he muttered, jaw tightening as he made a hard turn. Izuku grabbed onto the door handle, trying not to squeak as the momentum shoved him sideways. "Flying furniture?" Apparently, Bakugo grumbled. "Freakin' amateurs and their ridiculous quirks. Hang tight." Izuku nodded quickly, strapping his seatbelt tighter. What's the plan?" Bakugo smirked, gears shifting smoothly as he floored the gas. "Plan is I stop a jackass with an upholstery complex. You stay in the car. Got it?" Izuku opened his mouth to protest, but Bakugo shot him a glance so sharp it might as well have been a warning flare. "Got it," he said instead, heart hammering. Bakugo nodded once, eyes locked on the road ahead. "Good. Let's go deflate a sofa slinger." The scene was chaos. Traffic had come to a standstill, and panicked civilians scrambled between overturned vehicles and shattered storefronts. Enormous chairs, couches, and tables some the size of Delroy trucks were scattered like battlefield debris. At the center of it all, the villain stood on top of a flattened moving van, arms raised as he bellowed dramatically, his quirk inflating another massive recliner that hovered midair like a balloon. "Behold the earth of comfort," he roared. Bakugo launched a grenade blast at the floating recliner, only for the villain to deflect it with a reinforced ottoman. "This guy's gotta be kidding me," he snarled, dodging a rogue coffee table that flew through the smoke. Kirishima darted in, hardening up. Just in time to block a bookshelf. "He's got range and durability. Furniture's tougher than it looks." "This isn't furniture, it's urban warfare," Kaminari shouted from behind a crumpled bus stop. Bakugo gritted his teeth, scanning for an opening. He went in low and fast, charging up an explosion when a shadow shifted above him. "Bakugo, look out!" Kirishima shouted. A giant dining table, hurled with unnatural force, spun toward him like a saw blade. Bakugo barely had time to react when suddenly, something slammed into him from the side. He hit the pavement with a grunt, rolled once, and came to a stop behind a lamppost. "What the?" He looked up and froze. A figure in a black hoodie now stood where Bakugo had been moments ago, arms braced in a defensive stance. His face was concealed behind a dark mask, the hood pulled low to shadow his features and hide his hair. You could make out his eyes in his cheap getup, which Bakugo just noticed were forest green. Just like, wait, it was the Vigilante. The bestiary was here in the middle of Bakugo's op. "Stay down," the Vigilante muttered quickly, not waiting for a response as he turned and sprinted toward the fray. "What the hell?" Bakugo barked, scrambling to his feet, anger rising like a second heartbeat in his ears. The Vigilante moved through the chaos like he'd done it 100 times. He didn't go for the villain head-on. Instead, he leapt up a tilted streetlight, used it as a ramp, and landed on the back of a floating armchair the villain was about to launch. He kicked off again, flinging a flash disc directly into the villain's eyes. The man stumbled, blinded. Bakugo growled, launching himself forward. One perfectly timed explosion knocked the villain off the truck and into a pile of his own weaponized furniture. The chaos stilled. Civilians began peeking from cover. Sirens wailed in the distance. Bakugo stood over the villain, chest heaving. "Sit down." He turned back, but the vigilante was gone. Only a black hoodie fluttered down from a rooftop, caught on a clothesline above. Kirishima jogged up, panting. Did he just save your butt?" Bakugo's scowl deepened, but he said nothing. Plus 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 plus. Izuku crouched on a rooftop several buildings away, ripping off his mask as his heart pounded in his chest. From here, he could hear Bakugo yelling furious, loud, unmistakably said. Probably at the vigilante. At him. Panic rising, Izuku shoved his gear back into his bag and bolted down the fire escape, racing back toward the Ground Zero, the car where he was supposed to have stayed put. He caught his reflection in the window, straightened his clothes, and tried to calm his breathing. Everything had to look normal. What the hell had he been thinking? Of all times to play hero, he picked this one? But he couldn't just sit back and watch when things were going sideways. Not when the pros were struggling. Not when Bakugo had nearly gotten hurt. Even if it had been reckless, he'd do it again. Izuku slid back into the passenger seat of Ground Zero, doing his best to play it cool. He waited for Bakugo to return, settling into the role of the good tagalong. The slam of the driver's side door made Izuku flinch. Bakugo dropped into the seat with all the grace of a live grenade, jaw clenched and palms still crackling faintly from residual blasts. His eyes were narrowed, expression thunderous. "Demon Vigilante," he growled, gripping the steering wheel like it had personally offended him. "Shows up, gets in the way, and nearly ruins the whole DMN operation." Izuku kept his eyes forward, hands folded tightly in his lap. He could still feel his pulse in his ears. "Freakin' idiot, what was he even doing there?" Bakugo muttered. That was a level 3 threat, not some alley purse-snatcher. If he'd gotten himself killed. His voice faltered for a second. Izuku swallowed hard. The car fell silent except for the soft hum of the engine and Bakugo's heavy breaths. Then, more quietly, Bakugo asked, "You good?" Izuku blinked, startled, and glanced at him. "Huh? You okay?" Bakugo repeated, eyes flicking to him for a second before returning to the windshield. "Didn't know if that blast got close." "You weren't answering the comm." "Oh. Why, I'm fine," Izuku said quickly, a little too quickly. I just stayed put like you said. Lost track of time, I guess." Bakugo studied him for a beat, something unreadable in his gaze. His expression eased just slightly. "Good," he muttered, shifting the car into drive. "Wasn't exactly how I pictured the day going. But good to see you're okay." Izuku forced a smile, nodding. "Right." But guilt still clawed at his chest like a second heartbeat. "Shouldn't we stay behind? Help clean up the mess?" Izuku asked, glancing back toward the scene. "Nah," Bakugo replied, "that's their job. Plus we got cleanup crews for that crap if it gets too messy. They'll be fine." He shot Izuku a look. "Besides, we've done our part. Let the rest of them earn their paycheck for once." Bakugo leaned back in the driver's seat, hands still gripping the wheel, the tension in his shoulders finally starting to ease. His breathing evened out, the adrenaline fading into a dull thrum. He glanced sideways. Izuku was quiet, eyes forward, guilt still written all over his face despite everything being over. Bakugo let out a sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "You hungry?" Izuku blinked, caught off guard. "Echa?" "Yeah, actually I am." Bakugo gave a small grunt, almost a nod. "Good. Me too." A beat passed. "We're grabbing food. My treat. And don't argue, nerd." Izuku smiled small, surprised, but genuine. "Okay." Bakugo pulled the car away from the scene, the flashing lights and distant sirens fading behind them. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, just reflective. The kind that settled after something big. Something messy. Izuku leaned his head against the window, stealing a glance at Bakugo. He still looked tense, but his jaw wasn't clenched anymore. So, Izuku ventured, "Where are we going?" Bakugo snorted. "You'll see." A few minutes later, Izuku started recognizing the area, and then the big, glowing sign came into view, complete with a larger-than-life statue of All Might giving a big thumbs up. All Might's Plus Ultra Diner. Izuku's jaw dropped. "Here? You brought me here?" Bakugo grunted, clearly trying to play it cool as he pulled into the parking lot. "Food's good. Portions are big. No one bugs you." Izuku leaned forward, trying to contain his smirk. "You like this place?" "But didn't say that." Bakugo parked and stared straight ahead. "You totally like this place." Izuku laughed. "I'm shut up." Bakugo scowled, ears already turning red. "I like the food. That's it." Izuku was practically vibrating with delight. Coming to a restaurant where the waiters wear hero capes and shout, "Plus Ultra," after every order? This is amazing. Bakugo looked like he was seriously considering driving off again. "You want food or not?" "I do. I do." Izuku unbuckled with a grin. "I'm just honored. Getting invited to Dynamite's favorite diner? That's practically a date." Bakugo muttered something that sounded suspiciously like, "dead." "You're dead," under his breath, but he still held the door open for Izuku on the way inside. Sure enough, a waiter in a ridiculous All Might wig greeted them with a booming, "Welcome, heroes." Izuku bit his lip to keep from bursting into laughter as Bakugo mumbled, "Two. Back." He really was cute when flustered. Bakugo slid into the booth, choosing the seat with his back to the wall classic habit. Izuku took the one across from him, still wearing that amused smile. The place was loud and ridiculous. Hero memorabilia covered every surface. Neon signs flashed famous All Might quotes, and there was even a menu item called Texas Smashburger, with fries shaped like little punching gloves. Izuku flipped through the menu with wide eyes. This place is insane. In a good way. Bakugo didn't look up from his water. "Told you the food was good." A waitress dressed in a cape and gauntlets appeared. "Welcome to Plus Ultra Diner. Can I start you both off with a Justice Juice or a Smash Shake?" Izuku almost choked on his laugh. "I'll take a Strawberry Smash Shake, please." Bakugo sighed. "I'll take the Carolina Smashburger Deluxe, extra spicy, with a side of that weird green sauce." Bakugo grunted to the server, not even bothering to glance at a menu. The waitress smiled. "Plus Ultra," she cheered. "We'll have that out for you in a few, okay?" Then walked off. After she left, Izuku leaned on the table, grinning. "You really do come here often, huh?" Bakugo narrowed his eyes. "It's close to my agency. Reliable. Not everything's about stupid nostalgia." Izuku raised an eyebrow. "And the signed All Might figure in the display case up front? Totally not the reason you keep coming back." Bakugo kicked him lightly under the table. Izuku laughed, but then his smile softened as he looked at him. "Thanks. For tonight." Bakugo stared at him for a second. "For what? Almost getting you killed?" "No," Izuku said quickly. "For trusting me. For checking on me after. For, I don't know, bringing me here." He smiled again. "It's been a long time since I did anything remotely normal." Bakugo leaned back in his seat, eyes flicking toward the window. "You're not normal, nerd." "Gee, thanks." Bakugo smirked. "Didn't say it was a bad thing." Izuku blinked. The waitress came back with their drinks before he could figure out what to say. She set down a mug in front of Bakugo and a ridiculous, whipped cream-covered shake in front of Izuku, complete with a mini All Might figurine stuck into the top. "Oh my god," Izuku whispered. "This is the best day of my life." Bakugo snorted. "You're such a dork." But when Izuku smiled up at him over the whipped cream, Bakugo didn't look away. The All Might-themed diner was more than just flashy posters and hero-themed meals. It had a whole arcade section tucked into the back. Bright lights blinked from game machines, and the sound of 8-bit music mixed with excited laughter from kids, and a few competitive adults. Bakugo had just finished demolishing his Carolina Smashburger Deluxe, and was leaning back with that self-satisfied smirk, clearly content. But then his red eyes flicked toward the arcade corner. "Come on," he said, standing up and tossing his trash away. "Wanna show you something." Izuku followed, sipping the last of his shake. "Something hero-related?" Bakugo didn't answer, just jerked his chin toward the back of the diner where the punching game machine sat glowing, with a leather bag hanging down like a challenge. "You ever use one of these?" Izuku blinked. "No." Bakugo cracked his knuckles. "Watch and learn." He stepped up, rolled his shoulders, then let loose with a right hook that made the machine screech and flash bright red numbers across the screen. The score? Ridiculously high. A few nearby patrons clapped. One kid whispered, "Whoa, that guy's strong," to his dad. Bakugo smirked, stepping aside. "Your turn, nerd." Izuku looked at him, then the bag. "You just want to see me embarrass myself, don't you?" Bakugo shrugged. "Little bit." Izuku sighed, dramatically cracking his knuckles. "Fine. But if I break my wrist, I'm blaming you." He set his feet, drew in a breath, and hit the bag with surprising force. The machine whirred, then dinged, and numbers climbed and surpassed Bakugo's. Bakugo stared. "What the hell?" he muttered. Izuku blinked. "Wait, what?" Bakugo stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "No way." Sure enough, Izuku's score had beat his by a few points. Bakugo's eyes trailed down Izuku's arms, taking in the subtle definition in his forearms, the firm set of his shoulders under the baggy shirt. "You've got a sleeper build," he muttered. "When the hell did that happen?" Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, flustered. "I've been training. You know, staying in shape." "Teasage." Bakugo folded his arms. "You look like a DMN string bean but hit like a pro." "That's misleading." Izuku grinned. "Ah, you noticing my gains?" "I'm touched." Bakugo scoffed but didn't deny. "Don't let it go to your head." As they walked away, Bakugo glanced over again, his expression unreadable. He wasn't just impressed. He was curious and maybe just a little more interested in Izuku than he'd meant to be. Plus 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 plus. The car ride was quiet for a while, the low hum of the engine filling the space between them. The city lights flickered past the windows, casting soft glows across the dashboard and Izuku's thoughtful expression. "Hey," Izuku said, breaking the silence as he leaned back in his seat. "Can you drop me off at the cafe? I promised my mom I'd swing by." Bakugo gave a small nod, turning the wheel smoothly. "Yeah, sure." Another beat of silence passed, then Bakugo asked without looking over, "That job, is it something you've always wanted to do? Workin' at the cafe, I mean." Izuku blinked at the question, then let out a soft chuckle. "Not really. I mean, I don't hate it. My mom owns the place, so I help out when I can. It pays the bills, keeps me busy." Bakugo nodded once, eyes on the road. "I always wanted to be a hero," Izuku added, quieter this time. "But being quirkless kind of kills that dream before it even starts." The words hung in the air for a moment, heavy, matter-of-fact, but not bitter. Bakugo's grip on the wheel tightened slightly. He glanced over at Izuku, studying him in the dim lighting. Izuku smiled faintly. "I figured if I couldn't have a quirk, I could at least have strength or something. Something that could help. That's why I work out as much as I can. Between school, work, other things." Bakugo was silent for a second, jaw tense. He didn't know what to say. That being quirkless didn't make him any less capable, he'd seen that firsthand. But all that came out was a low, stupid society. Izuku laughed softly. "Tell me about it." Bakugo turned onto the familiar block near the cafe, slowing down. "You're still doing it though. Helping people. Doesn't matter if it's pouring coffee or whatever." Izuku blinked, startled by the rare, almost gentle tone in Bakugo's voice. The car stopped in front of the cafe. Izuku reached for the door handle but hesitated. "Thanks," he said quietly. "For the ride." And for today. Bakugo gave a small grunt. Whatever. But as Izuku stepped out and gave a cheerful wave before heading into the cafe, Bakugo found himself watching a second too long. Something tugged at the back of his mind, an itch he couldn't scratch. He saw Vigilante's eyes today when he had flicked toward him for a split second. Sharp, focused, green. Exactly the same shade as Izuku's. Bakugo's jaw tightened. That was ridiculous. Plenty of people had green eyes. Right? Still, as he put the car in drive, his thoughts wouldn't let it go. Because the Vigilante was smart. Quick, strategic. And Izuku was Izuku. Sweet, clumsy and shy. Bakugo scoffed under his breath. When he really thought about it, he really didn't know the nerd all that well in just a few months, right? He was just overthinking it. Probably. Maybe. Because quirkless or not, there was nothing small about the nerd that made Bakugo feel that he wasn't capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with real heroes. And because of that, he made a mental note to keep a closer eye on the nerd. Just in case. Izuku barely slept. After the patrol the day before, Izuku's phone buzzed with texts well past midnight. Bakugo firing off messages like, "That DMN punching machine was rigged. No way you actually beat me. We're doing a rematch next time." Izuku couldn't help but smile as he read them, still half drowsy in bed. Was it really that serious? He didn't get it, but clearly, Bakugo did. Somewhere around 2 a.m., Bakugo had randomly texted, "Dynamite. You ever just sit on a rooftop and listen to the city? This. OMG, are we bonding? Dynamite. Shut up. Not what this is." But Izuku had gone to bed smiling. Unfortunately, he hadn't exactly stayed asleep. Between the adrenaline, the texts, and the echo of Bakugo's voice in his head, Izuku managed maybe 3 hours of rest. He still showed up at the cafe, just running on fumes and caffeine. The bell over the door jingled a little after 6 a.m. Bakugo walked in like the day had been waiting for him to arrive. Sharp jaw, wild hair, the usual scowl that somehow looked more handsome and thoughtful today. Izuku, bleary-eyed but determined, slid his coffee across the counter before Bakugo could even speak. "Here's your usual extra strong, no sugar." Bakugo smiled, feeling a bit special. Not that he would tell Izuku that, "You memorize all your customers' orders, Deku, or just mine?" "I am just the regulars. Also, you order the same thing each time." Izuku stammered, cheeks already warming. Bakugo smiled, then reached out to grab the cup. Izuku's hand was still on it. Their fingers touched and stayed there. Longer than necessary. A spark of tension zipped down Izuku's spine as their eyes locked, the early morning world narrowing to that one, quiet moment. Neither of them moved. Ahem. May coughed loudly from behind the espresso machine, with a grin sharp enough to cut steel. Izuku startled, yanking his hand back like he'd been shocked. Sorry. Enjoy your drink," he blurted, cheeks flaming, and promptly fled to the back room. Bakugo stared after him, lips twitching. May leaned on the counter, clearly living for the drama. "You know," she said casually, "the chemistry in here is so thick, I might charge a hazard fee." Bakugo ignored her, turning to leave. He took a long sip of his coffee as he stepped into the morning air. That's when he noticed it. Just beneath his name on the side of the cup, drawn in green sharped, 2 tiny cartoon grenade gauntlets, perfectly detailed. He stared at them for a long beat, then let out a soft snort. Dumbass. But he didn't throw the cup away. Plus 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 plus. The rhythmic thud of fists against canvas echoed in the small shed-turn training room tucked behind the Midoriya home. The space was cramped but functional, bare walls lined with gear, makeshift weights, old all-might posters, and a heavy punching bag swinging slightly with each strike. Izuku's knuckles stung, sweat dripping from his brow as he landed punch after punch, his breathing steady but intense. His focus was razor-sharp, yet his mind kept drifting back to the other night. To Bakugo. To that moment in the car. And then to the rooftop, when he donned the hoodie and mask again. Behind him, a loud zap. And a puff of smoke signaled May's latest invention doing something. She was hunched over a cluttered workbench, goggles on, tools scattered around her as she tinkered with what looked like an upgraded grappling hook. "Hey," she called without looking up, "you're hitting that thing like it owes you money." Izuku slowed for a moment, catching his breath. Just letting off steam. May finally turned around, wiping her hands on her grease-stained jumpsuit. "So, how long are you planning on hiding the whole vigilante in love thing from Boom Boom Boy?" Izuku froze. "I am not in love," he said quickly, maybe a little too quickly. May raised a brow. "But you sure blushed like someone in love when his hand touched yours yesterday." Izuku groaned, resting his forehead against the bag. "That was nothing. Just timing. Proximity. Reflex." She smirked. "But, and I'm the new symbol of peace." Silence settled for a beat, broken only by the quiet hum of her tools warming up again. "Seriously. Though," she added, softer now, "maybe you should lay low for a bit. The pros are sniffing around more than usual. You don't want to get caught, especially not by dynamite." Izuku didn't answer right away. He stared at the floor, jaw tight. The guilt gnawed at him like a splinter he couldn't pull out. "I can't stop," he finally said, voice quiet. "Not yet." May sighed, turning back to her project. "Didn't think you would." She handed him the upgraded gadget with a shrug. "It should give you a few more feet of reach. Try not to break it or your face." Izuku smiled faintly, taking it. "Thanks, May." But even as he strapped it to his wrist and got back into stance, the weight on his chest didn't lighten. Izuku wiped the sweat from his brow, chest still rising and falling from his last round with the punching bag. He had just set down his water bottle when his phone buzzed. "Dynamite. Just wrapped patrol. Caught some BSTRD trying to hold up a bank with a liquefy quirk. Moron melted half a streetlight before I put him down. What are you up to, nerd?" Izuku smiled, thumbs already flying across the screen. "That training. Gotta stay sharp somehow." From across the room, May's head popped up from behind a pile of parts. "Is that Boom Boom Boy?" Izuku flinched, clutching his phone like she could see the screen. "I may be." "I knew it. You're getting that dumb, flustered look again." She stood, wiping her hands on a rag. "You should send him a selfie." "What?" Izuku sputtered. Why would he want that?" May rolled her eyes. "Trust me. Just do it. Visual, but like, look at me being all tough and sweaty. He'll eat that up." Izuku stared at her, completely red in the face. "That's insane. And yet you're still holding the phone." She smirked, nodding toward it. "Come on. Peace sign. Punching bag in the back. You'll look cute." Still hesitant, Izuku angled the camera up, cheeks pink, and gave a sheepish peace sign. The punching bag loomed behind him, and his tank top was clinging to his chest in all the right, or wrong, ways. He hit send before he could overthink it. Now he was overthinking it. Every second felt like an hour. Why isn't he answering? Izuku muttered, staring at the message thread. May shrugged, smug as ever. "Just wait." Finally, the phone lit up again. "Dynamite. When are you free?" Izuku's breath caught for a moment, rereading it twice to make sure he wasn't imagining things. May leaned over and glanced at the screen. "Told you." Izuku turned to her, still pink in the cheeks. "He's asking when I'm free, but I've got shifts all week." May shrugged, pulling her goggles up. "Then I'll cover. Just tell me when." He hesitated for only a second before his fingers flew across the screen. "I'm off tomorrow if that works for you." The reply came faster than expected. "Dynamite. Perfect. I'll pick you up. Also wear workout gear." Izuku set the phone down slowly, hands warm, heart racing. May wiggled her eyebrows. "You better wear something cute, future sidekick." Izuku groaned, burying his face in his hands. "It's not like that." May snorted with amusement and waved him off, turning back to her workbench with a grin. Yeah, keep telling yourself that," she said, refocusing on the half-finished gadget in her hands as her tools buzzed back to life. plus 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 plus. Bakugo pulled up to the curb, outside of Izuku's home. The sleek growl of Ground Zero idling low as Izuku jogged out of the house, practically buzzing with excitement. He opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, eyes lighting up the moment he settled in. "Morning," he said, fastening his seatbelt. "Thanks for picking me up." Bakugo didn't reply right away, just handed him a steaming to-go cup. Izuku blinked, taking it. "Wait, is this from the cafe?" He sniffed the lid and grinned. "This is my usual. Did you stop by before coming here?" Bakugo shrugged, eyes on the road as he pulled away. "Your mom was there. She recognized me. Said you're useless without coffee in the morning." Izuku laughed, already touched. "That sounds about right." Bakugo reached into the center console and handed him a small paper bag. Izuku peeked inside. "You even got me a muffin?" "Don't make a big deal out of it," Bakugo muttered. "Your mom also said you've been skipping breakfast lately. Between school and work? That's dumb. You need fuel, Deku, or you'll pass out mid-shift." Izuku huffed a laugh, raising an eyebrow. "Great, now I've got two moms nagging me." Bakugo shot him a look. "I'm not nagging. I'm educating your dumbass on survival." Izuku smiled into his cup, heart doing flips. "Thanks. For all of it." Bakugo didn't answer, but the faintest smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth as they drove off. As the city buzzed quietly around them, Izuku took a sip from his coffee and glanced over. "So, where are we going?" Bakugo kept his eyes on the road, smirking just a little. "You'll see." They drove in companionable silence for a bit, the low hum of the engine filling the gaps. Izuku eventually turned to him again. "So, how's everything going at the agency?" Bakugo let out a non-committal grunt. "Same old crap. Missions, meetings, paperwork." He paused, fingers flexing on the steering wheel. "It's not really like how I imagined it'd be, you know? When I was younger, hero work felt like everything. Like it was supposed to mean something big." Izuku blinked. "What do you mean?" Bakugo shrugged, the motion stiff. "I dunno. Just feels like I'm losing the spark of it sometimes. Like all the hype got buried under red tape and press conferences." Izuku frowned, concerned. "Oh." Bakugo nodded, then added almost too quietly, "But lately, there's been something. Someone actually making it feel interesting again." Izuku's head tilted. "Oh." But Bakugo cut the engine and pulled into a lot before Izuku could finish the question. "We're here," he said, getting out of the car without answering. Izuku leaned forward, peering through the windshield as Bakugo parked. His eyes widened, mouth parting slightly in surprise. "Wait, this is Best Jeanist's agency," he practically squeaked, twisting to look at Bakugo. "Why are we here? Is this a patrol thing? A surprise visit? Are we meeting him? Is he here right now?" Bakugo barely got a word in before the sleek front doors slid open and a sharply dressed woman with immaculate posture and a high ponytail strode out toward them. Her sharp heels clicked against the pavement with authority. "Dynamite," she greeted with a nod. "He's expecting you. This way, please." Izuku turned to Bakugo, eyes gleaming with stars and pure fanboy energy. Bakugo rolled his eyes, trying and failing to suppress a smirk. "Don't start squealing," he muttered under his breath as they followed the aide inside. "You'll blow out her eardrums." The polished lobby of the agency gleamed under soft overhead lights, every corner exuding elegance and order just like its owner. Izuku was still taking in the pristine displays of hero memorabilia when footsteps approached from the far hallway. "Ah," came the calm, composed voice. "I thought I heard familiar boots." Izuku turned just in time to see Best Jeanist himself approaching, all long lines and impeccable denim. He extended a hand toward Izuku first. "You must be Izuku. A pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard quite a bit," he said with a small, knowing smile. Izuku froze for a split second before eagerly taking the hand. It's such an honor, sir." I've admired your work for years, and your fabric manipulation is incredible and your contributions to fashion and heroism. Breathe, nerd, Bakugo muttered beside him, though the corners of his mouth twitched upward. Best Genius turned to Bakugo next. And as for you, without hesitation, he pulled Bakugo into a brief but firm hug. Bakugo stiffened immediately. Hey, what the hell? He grumbled, glancing at Izuku like he'd just been caught hugging a teddy bear in public. Genius chuckled, patting him on the back. Relax, Katsuki. You're among friends. Then, with a slight bow of the head, he turned and walked off down the corridor. Make yourselves at home. I'll be in my office if you need me. Bakugo groaned under his breath. He always does that crap. Swear he's trying to embarrass me. Izuku just grinned, eyes bright. Honestly? That was kind of adorable. Don't start, Bakugo warned, ears already pink. Bakugo shoved his hands in his pockets as they walked further into the sleek interior of the agency. Used to intern here back in high school, he muttered. Genius took me in during my second year. Ended up staying on as a sidekick for a while. Izuku glanced around the place with wide eyes. Seriously? That's amazing. Bakugo gave a shrug. Yeah, well, eventually he told me I should run my own agency. Said I had the leadership and drive for it. He paused, then added with a small snort, figured if the Denim King himself thought I could pull it off, I might as well try. Izuku looked at him, eyes lighting up. Oh, I remember that. When you interned with him it was all over the news and social media for weeks. Everyone was talking about it. You were trending for like 3 days straight. Bakugo stopped walking, narrowing his eyes slightly. Remember that? Izuku's face went pink immediately. I mean, not like I was following it religiously or anything, he stammered, waving his hands. It was just big news back then. That's all. Bakugo stared a beat longer, then gave a quiet snort and kept walking. Nerd, he muttered under his breath, but Izuku didn't miss the way his shoulders relaxed and the faint smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. As they turned a corner and passed a row of framed hero photos, Izuku glanced up at Bakugo curiously. So, what are we doing here, exactly? He asked. Bakugo smirked. We're gonna train. Train. Izuku blinked. Yeah, Bakugo said, nodding toward a pair of double doors down the hall. Genius Gym is one of the best. I use it sometimes when mine's booked up or being used by the new batch of interns. Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, your gym is being used? Bakugo gave him a pointed look. Yenard, I run an agency, remember? Got new sidekicks in training and interns coming in from the high school circuit. I'm not about to share my space with a bunch of rookies stumbling over themselves. Izuku laughed a little under his breath, clearly amused. So you dragged me here to work out in luxury while the babies take over your agency? Bakugo smirked. Demon right, I did. Then he glanced sideways at Izuku, a tone a little more casual. It looks like you train hard. Thought it'd be fun to see what you've really got. Izuku's breath hitched slightly, a grin tugging at his lips. Well, I'll try not to disappoint. Bakugo scoffed lightly, but his expression softened just enough. We'll see, Deku. They stepped into the gym, and Izuku's eyes widened. It was bigger than he expected, clean, spacious, with polished floors and reinforced walls clearly made to take a hit. There were a few training zones, weight equipment, a full-length mirror on one side, and even 2 locker rooms tucked neatly in the back. Not bad, right? Bakugo said, already tossing his jacket onto a nearby bench. Genius doesn't mess around. Izuku nodded, still taking it all in. You can drop your bag over there, Bakugo added, pointing to the bench beside his. We've got the place to ourselves for a bit. Izuku placed his bag down and turned, curiosity bubbling up. So, what kind of training we're doing? Bakugo cracked his neck, then shifted into a loose fighting stance, feet braced and fists raised. I'm curious, he said, eyes sharp but amused. After that stupid punching machine at the diner and from what I've seen, you train like hell. I want to see what you can really do. Izuku blinked. Wait, you want to spar? Bakugo smirked. What? Nervous, Deku? Izuku straightened, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Only a little. Good, Bakugo said. Let's see if that sleeper strength of yours can actually keep up. Izuku stepped back a few paces, rolling his shoulders as he dropped into his stance low, balanced, and alert. His eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of focus shifting across his face as he sized Bakugo up. Bakugo gave a cocky little grin. Not bad. Same to you, Izuku replied, tone light but determined. Without another word, Bakugo lunged forward quick and sharp, a flurry of feints testing Izuku's reflexes. Izuku ducked, blocked, and twisted out of the way, his muscles remembering every movement from months of solo training. It was fast, intense, and exhilarating. Then, in one smooth move, Izuku shifted his weight, caught Bakugo's wrist, and swept his legs out from under him. In a blink, Bakugo hit the mat with a solid thud, Izuku straddling his chest, breathless but grinning. Pinned, Izuku huffed, barely able to believe it himself. Bakugo stared up at him, momentarily stunned, before his scowl deepened, but it didn't quite hide the spark of amusement in his eyes. Lucky shot, he grunted. They reset. The next round was even faster. Bakugo wasn't holding back anymore. Izuku kept up the best he could, dodging most of the blasts, but Bakugo's experience was undeniable. Eventually, Bakugo caught him mid-dodge, spun him around, and pinned him flat on his back with one arm across his chest. Gotcha now, nerd, Bakugo smirked, breathing heavily. Izuku groaned, squirming slightly until he noticed Bakugo's eyes shift and squint at something. What the are you seriously wearing dynamite merch? Izuku froze. Bakugo leaned back just enough to tug at the waistband peeking out. Is that my logo on your underwear? Izuku's face went scarlet. It was laundry day, he blurted. All my regular ones were in the wash. Bakugo threw his head back and laughed, an actual full laugh that echoed through the gym. I can't believe it. Dynamite boxers? That's some top-tier fanboy behavior, Deku. Izuku groaned and slapped a hand over his eyes. Kill me. Nope, Bakugo snorted. Not when this is the best thing I've seen all week. Izuku twisted out of Bakugo's grip with a breathless laugh, rolling to his feet as they reset again. Sweat clung to his brow, chest rising and falling with each breath, but his eyes sparkled. He was enjoying this. They both were. Bakugo was smiling too, not his usual cocky grin, but something more genuine, looser around the edges. Ready to go again, nerd? Izuku nodded, stance shifting into place. Try not to go easy on me this time. As if, Bakugo scoffed, cracking his knuckles. They circled each other, boots skimming across the mats, reading each other's movements. Then Bakugo lunged quick jabs meant to test Izuku's reflexes. Izuku dodged, pivoted, and countered with a smooth jab of his own, light but precise. Then came another one, clean, sharp right across Bakugo's jaw. Bakugo stumbled back a step, blinking. It was identical to the hit he took in the alley the night he first encountered the Vigilante. The angle, the speed, the way it caught him off guard. His jaw ticked slightly as the memory flashed in his head. Nighttime, that masked figure, that same hit. Whoa, Izuku said, surprised at himself. Sorry. I didn't mean to. Before either of them could say more, Best Jeanist appeared in the doorway, arms crossed but casual. Lunch is ready in the break room. You two coming, or are you planning to spar until dinner? Bakugo's eyes were still on Izuku. Narrowed. Curious. He rubbed his jaw, blinking away the suspicion before it settled too deep. Yeah, Bakugo said slowly. We'll be there. Just gotta finish this match. He turned back to Izuku, slipping into a stance again. But this time, there was something unreadable behind his eyes. Not anger. Just calculation. They finished the round, but the energy had shifted. Bakugo wasn't being overtly aggressive, but his movements were sharper now. More precise. Watching. Testing. Izuku, a bit too keyed into the moment, noticed it but chalked it up to competitiveness. Finally, Bakugo called it. That's it, he said, breath a little ragged. Lunch before I actually break something. Izuku laughed nervously and nodded. Why yeah, sounds good. They both grabbed towels and water bottles and made their way down the hall toward the break room. The scent of warm food drifted out: rice, miso, and something fried. Genus didn't mess around. As they walked, Bakugo glanced sideways. "That hit," he said casually, like he was talking about the weather. "Where'd you learn that move?" Izuku's grip tightened slightly on his towel. "Just watched a lot of footage. Trial and error." Bakugo hummed. "Looks like more than just watching. You've got real form." Izuku smiled, keeping his tone light. "You have been texting me every detail about your patrols. Guess I got inspired." Bakugo snorted. "Tss, whatever." They entered the break room, greeted by the warm buzz of conversation from a few of Genist's other sidekicks. Izuku bowed politely, still slightly flushed. Bakugo just grunted and went for the food. As they sat down to eat, Bakugo took out his phone under the table. Not texting anyone, just staring at the lock screen. That punch. That form. The eyes. Too many pieces were starting to click into place. But when Bakugo glanced over at Izuku laughing mid-bite, fumbling his chopsticks, and completely oblivious to the sauce smudged on his cheek, something in him unclenched. Just a little. He set his phone down and grabbed his chopsticks. No point overthinking something he wasn't even sure about. Not yet, anyway. Not when he was finally getting time like this with Izuku. He wasn't about to ruin it. Plus 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 plus. He was ruining it. After lunch, Best Jeanist insisted on giving Izuku a full tour of the agency, something Bakugo hadn't planned for. Izuku, of course, lit up like a kid in a candy store, eagerly hanging on to every word. Bakugo didn't have the heart to tell Jeanist it wasn't necessary. So he trailed behind them, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on Izuku. Watching the way he moved. The way he listened. The way he smiled. But his mind kept drifting back to the spar, back to the punch. Same angle. Same force. Same diamond spot on his jaw as that night. Coincidence? Maybe. But it was getting harder to believe that. Later in the day they stepped out of Best Jeanist's agency into the late afternoon sun, the golden light casting a warm glow over the pavement. Izuku bounced slightly on his heels, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, still grinning from the tour. "That was honestly amazing," he said, turning to Bakugo with bright, open eyes. "Thanks for bringing me. I really had a great time today." Bakugo glanced over at him, pausing mid-step. Those DMN eyes. Bright, honest, the exact same shade of green that had stared at him through a black mask the night he'd been punched by the Vigilante. That night had been a blur of adrenaline and frustration, but that detail had stuck with him. He stared a beat too long. Izuku tilted his head. "What's wrong?" Bakugo blinked and looked away quickly, pretending to adjust the strap on his bag. "Nothing." The pause. "You want to hang out a little longer?" Izuku hesitated for a moment. He had work in the morning, and technically he should be getting home, but Bakugo looked tense. Quiet in a way that wasn't his usual snappy bark. There was something in his eyes that made Izuku pause. "Sure," Izuku said softly, his smile returning. "Yeah, I'd like that." Bakugo didn't say anything at first, just nodded, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his expression as they walked on together, side by side. They ended up in a quiet little park a few blocks away, nestled between two apartment buildings like a well-kept secret. In the center stood a modest statue of All Might, frozen in his signature pose, grinning wide, cape billowing behind him. It wasn't anything flashy. Just a few weathered benches, a stone fountain trickling softly, and the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. But it was peaceful. The kind of place the city seemed to forget existed. Bakugo sat on the edge of a bench and leaned back, stretching his arms along the backrest like he owned the whole park. Izuku settled beside him, a little more upright, legs bouncing slightly as he adjusted his bag on his lap. For a moment, they didn't say anything. Just listened to the distant hum of the city and the occasional chirp of birds in the trees. Izuku sat on one of the benches, glancing up at the familiar All Might statue with a nostalgic smile. "I used to play here when I was a kid," he said softly. Me and a couple of the neighborhood kids would pretend we were heroes, running around this park like we were saving the world. He laughed under his breath. I was always All Might. No surprise there. Izuku's gaze drifted to the statue of All Might in the middle of the park, the faint glint of gold catching the last rays of sun. I always wanted to be a hero, he said quietly. Ever since I was a kid. But when I found out I was quirkless, it felt like that dream died before I even had a chance to chase it. Bakugo didn't say anything, just listened, eyes steady. I used to cry about it all the time, Izuku continued with a small, embarrassed laugh. Not because I wanted attention or anything, I just didn't know what else to do. When you're a kid, and the world tells you you're not built for your dream, it hurts. He kicked at a pebble near the bench. I still wanted to help people though. So I went into quirk studies. I figured even if I couldn't be a hero, I could study how quirks worked, support people who did have them, maybe even help make things safer for others like me. Bakugo glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. And may my best friend, she's quirkless too, Izuku added with a soft smile. But she's insanely smart. Like, genius smart. If UA had known what they were doing, she should have been in the support course from the start. She builds things in her sleep. Sometimes I think she's more prepared for this world than I am. There was a pause. The wind rustled through the trees again. But yeah, Izuku finished, voice quieter, being quirkless kind of teaches you to find your own way. Even if it's not the one you imagined. Bakugo leaned back on the bench beside him, arms draped casually over the backrest, eyes watching Izuku more than the statue. Yeah, it sounds about right. Izuku turned toward him. What about you? He asked. Why did you want to become a hero? Bakugo was quiet for a moment, gaze drifting upward to the sky between the swaying tree branches. Should he tell him? About how he felt? About everything? If Izuku really was who Bakugo was starting to suspect the vigilante, then maybe this had already gone too far. Taking him on patrols, texting him details he had no business sharing. He might have already screwed this up beyond repair. Bakugo dragged a hand down his face, cursing under his breath. What the hell was he thinking? When he glanced over, Izuku was watching him, those vivid green eyes full of quiet concern, like he could see every tangled thought Bakugo was trying to shove down. Those demon eyes. They made it even harder to lie to himself. Dunno, he finally said, voice low. I guess. I wanted to be the best. Wanted to win. Wanted people to look at me the way they looked at heroes on the news. Like nothing could touch me. He paused, then glanced sideways at Izuku. But I think it changed over time. Izuku blinked. Changed how? Bakugo let out a slow breath, his eyes focused on the All Might statue like he was trying to see through it past it. You know, he muttered, being a hero, it's not what I thought it'd be. Izuku looked over at him, the softness in Bakugo's voice catching him off guard. When I was younger, it felt bigger. Like every step I took was getting me closer to something huge. Something important. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture sharp with frustration. But now? I don't know. Some days it just feels like reports, meetings, cleaning up messes some idiot made before I got there. Izuku stayed quiet, listening. Bakugo's voice dropped, rough at the edges. I hate admitting it, but the spark's fading. I feel it. It pees me off. Like, what the hell is wrong with me? He clenched his jaw. My friends, they followed me when I decided to start my own agency. I didn't even ask. They just showed up, said they had my back. Kirishima, Mina, Siro, Denki, they believe in me. Still do. And I'm grateful I am. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, gaze dropping to the ground. But sometimes I feel like I'm letting them down. Like I'm just going through the motions. There was a pause. The breeze ruffled the trees above, filling the silence. Izuku's voice was quiet and steady. You're not letting anyone down, Kaken. Kaken? Bakugo raised an eyebrow, amused. Izuku flushed, clutching his drink a little tighter. You gave me a nickname, so I figured it's only fair I return the favor. Bakugo let out a low huff of laughter, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. All right, fair enough. Bakugo really looked at him, and for a second, something raw passed between them. Then he exhaled. I think I know why I've been hanging around you so much lately. Izuku blinked. Huh. Bakugo shrugged, eyes fixed on the quiet sway of the trees in the breeze. You still get excited about all of this. Like it's brand new. You remind me of myself when I first got into this hero sheet, Bakugo went on, his tone almost reluctant but real. Izuku's mouth parted slightly, unsure what to say, his heart thudding a little too fast. Bakugo gave an awkward grunt and looked away. Not saying you're perfect, thud. You still ramble like a DMN encyclopedia and get all flustered over every little thing. He smirked. But I see how you work. And you've got guts. And you matter. Plus 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 plus. Izuku didn't speak right away. He couldn't. He just stared at Bakugo, stunned because somehow, without meaning to, Bakugo had said something that cracked his whole world open. The weight of everything he wasn't saying suddenly started pressing at the back of his throat. A part of him wanted to tell him the truth, to finally confess the thing that had been gnawing at him night after night. That he was the vigilante. That he wasn't just studying hero work from the sidelines, but actively out there, risking everything to help. But then what? Bakugo was a pro-hero. Telling him would be a confession and a crime. He could be arrested. Ruin everything, not just for himself, but for Mei, for his mom, for anyone who believed in him. He couldn't risk it. So instead, he swallowed it down, locking the truth behind another forced smile. He lowered his gaze, heart hammering, and slowly reached out, fingers brushing over Bakugo's hand before settling gently on top of it. In his peripheral vision, he saw Bakugo turn toward him. Felt the way Bakugo's fingers shifted, then tightened, squeezing his hand in return. Hey, Bakugo said quietly, his voice rough with something softer than usual. Look at me. Izuku lifted his eyes, and the moment their gazes met, the rest of the world faded. You have the most beautiful eyes I've ever effing seen, Bakugo muttered, like it was a secret he'd been holding too long. And then he leaned in. Izuku didn't hesitate, not this time. He met him halfway.